In the merciless heat of the Texas desert, where shadows offer the only reprieve from blistering sun, some souls are abandoned to die. Others are left to wander, haunted by the ghosts of decisions they couldn't unmake. What happens when these broken spirits find each other? When a man carrying the weight of war meets creatures born to run free, yet marked for destruction, there are wounds that never heal by themselves. There are, there are connections that defy explanation. And in the vast, unforgiving landscape where hope seems as scarce as rain, sometimes the most unexpected encounters become our salvation. This is a story about 5 young lives discarded as flawed and one human soul convinced he was beyond repair. When powerful forces conspire to control what should remain wild, who will stand between freedom and those who would crush it? Some bonds transcend words. Some spirits refuse to be broken. The explosion ripped through the mud brick walls of the Afghan village, turning the clear desert air into a maelstrom of dust and shrapnel. Lieutenant Alex Winters felt the concussive force slam against his chest before his ears registered the deafening sound. His squad scattered for cover as bullets rained down from unseen positions in the surrounding hills. "Contact North Ridge," Alex shouted into his radio, pressing his back against a crumbling wall. "Parker Reynolds, cover the east." The ambush had been perfectly orchestrated. What should have been a routine patrol through a supposedly secured village had turned into a death trap. Through the chaos, Alex caught sight of Sergeant Mike Davis, his closest friend since basic training, signaling from across the narrow dirt road. "Multiple shooters, high ground," Mike's voice crackled through the radio. "We need to fall back," and Mike's voice cut off as his eyes fixed on something behind Alex. In that frozen moment, Alex saw a change come over his friend's face. A terrible clarity, a decision made in an instant. "Mike, what?" "IED," Mike shouted, already in motion. "Everybody down!" Alex turned to see what Mike had spotted. A barely visible wire running across the pathway where 3 of their squad members had taken cover. Before Alex could react, Mike was sprinting toward them, weapon discarded, moving with desperate purpose. "Get back!" Mike yelled, pushing the men away from the hidden explosive. The last thing Alex saw was Mike's eyes meeting his, a look of absolute certainty, before the world erupted into blinding white light and a thunderous roar that seemed to tear the very air apart. Alex bolted upright in bed, heart hammering against his rib sheets, soaked with sweat. The phantom sound of the explosion still echoed in his ears as he gasped for breath in the darkness. His hands trembled as he reached for the lamp beside his bed, knocking over a bottle of prescription pills in the process. The soft yellow light revealed a Spartan bedroom with bare walls and minimal furniture. Just a bed, a dresser, and a chair where he draped his clothes. Nothing personal, nothing that marked this space as truly inhabited, nothing that connected him to the present. The digital clock on the nightstand read 3:15 a.m. Another night, another failed attempt at rest. 4 hours was the most he'd managed since returning to Lone Pine Ranch 3 months ago. Alex swung his legs over the side of the bed and buried his face in his hands, waiting for his racing heart to slow. The prescription bottle lay on its side, pills scattered across the worn wooden floor. The label read Prazosin for PTSD-related nightmares. Fat lot of good they were doing. He pulled on a t-shirt and made his way through the darkened hallway of the ranch house, floorboards creaking beneath his bare feet. The house was a time capsule. His father's domain virtually unchanged since Alex had left for the Army 15 years ago. The same faded wallpaper, the same austere furniture, the same oppressive silence that had defined his childhood. Alex stepped onto the front porch, the weathered wood cool beneath his feet. The Texas night spread before him, vast and star-filled, the silhouettes of distant hills, a jagged black line against the indigo sky. The ranch stretched out in all directions. 200 acres of struggling pasture land, neglected fences, and dried-up stock ponds. His inheritance? His prison. A gentle breeze carried the scent of dust and sage. In the distance, an owl called its lonely cry, echoing across the empty landscape. "This place is dying," Alex whispered to himself, the habit of talking aloud a remnant of long desert patrols where silence became an enemy of its own. He leaned against the porch railing, gazing out at what had once been his father's pride. Daniel Winters had lived and died on this land, working it until his heart gave out 3 months ago. Alex had returned for the funeral, intending to sell the property and leave, but something had kept him here. Not sentimentality. There was little love lost between him and his father. Perhaps inertia, perhaps because he had nowhere else to go. The words escaped his lips, a confession to the indifferent night. Dad lived and died here. Now I'm back not to live, just not to die somewhere else. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Alex made coffee and stared at the stack of bills on the kitchen table. The ranch was deeply in debt. Property taxes, equipment, repairs, and a mortgage his father had taken out in his final years. The bank was sending increasingly urgent notices. He had 6 months of his military savings left, maybe less. The morning light revealed the true state of Lone Pine Ranch. Fences sagging or broken entirely, equipment rusted in neglected outbuildings in disrepair. Alex pulled on work boots and a faded denim shirt, grabbed his toolbox, and headed to the eastern fence line. Physical labor was the only thing that quieted his mind these days, exhausting his body enough that sometimes, just sometimes, he could sleep without seeing Mike's face in that final moment. The Texas summer sun beat down mercilessly as Alex hammered a new fence post into the hard ground. Sweat soaked through his shirt and his leg. A network of scar tissue from the same IED that had taken Mike throbbed with a dull, familiar pain. The fence marked the boundary between Lone Pine and public land, scrubby, rocky terrain that eventually gave way to federal wilderness. As he worked, the distant sound of an engine caught his attention. Through the heat haze, he spotted a black pickup truck with tinted windows moving slowly along a dirt track about a half-mile away, well off the main road. The vehicle stopped at the edge of a shallow ravine that cut through the landscape. Alex paused, hammer suspended mid-swing. The truck's emblem was too distant to make out, but something about its presence felt wrong. This was remote country. No reason for anyone to be out there unless they were up to something. Two men in dark clothing emerged from the truck, moved to the back, and lowered the tailgate. They lifted something out, several small struggling forms, and carried them down into the ravine. Within minutes, they returned empty-handed, closed the tailgate, and drove away, dust billowing behind them. Curiosity and unease propelled Alex forward. He grabbed his water canteen and followed their path, keeping to the natural cover of mesquite trees and rock formations. The ravine was about 8 feet deep, with steep sides of packed earth and loose stone. As he approached the edge, he heard it. Weak, tremulous sounds, half stifled and desperate. Alex slid down the embankment and felt his breath catch in his throat. There, huddled together on the hard-packed earth, lay 5 newborn horses. Foals so young their coats still showed the softness of new life. They were rail-thin sides, heaving with labored breaths, ribs clearly visible beneath dull coats. "Jesus Christ," Alex muttered, dropping to his knees beside them. The foals were in terrible condition, severely dehydrated, their eyes sunken, lips cracked from thirst. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old, far too young to be separated from their mothers. Without water, they wouldn't survive the day in this heat. One foal, a silver-gray colt, raised its head weakly as Alex approached. Despite its condition, its eyes held a startling clarity, an awareness that seemed to assess him. The other foals were barely moving: a chestnut filly with a reddish coat, a palomino with golden fur, a pure black colt that trembled with fear, and a small dun-colored colt that appeared to be the weakest of all its breeding, shallow and labored. As Alex moved closer, he noticed something strange. Each foal bore a small mark on its flank, a series of numbers and letters that appeared to be tattooed into their skin. WBX0571, WITX572, and so on. Not natural markings, but deliberate identification. "Someone did this to you," he said, anger rising in his chest. "Someone left you here to die." He pulled out his phone and took several photos documenting the scene and the markings. Then he recorded a short video narrating what he had found and where. The reception was non-existent this far out, but he'd upload it once he got back to the ranch. The silver-gray colt watched him intently as Alex poured water into his cupped hand and offered it. After a moment's hesitation, the foal stretched its neck and lapped desperately at the moisture. Alex repeated this with each animal, cradling the dun colt's head to help it drink. "I've got to get you out of here," Alex said, more to himself than to the foals. He removed his shirt and tore it into strips, creating a makeshift shade for the weakest animals. Then he jogged back to where he'd been working, retrieved his truck, and returned with an old tarpon rope. Working carefully, he fashioned a sling that could carry the foals back to his truck. The black colt fought weakly as Alex lifted it, but the others seemed too exhausted to resist. The silver gray was the last, and to Alex's surprise, it wobbled onto the tarp without prompting, almost as if it understood. Dragging the tarp across the rough terrain was grueling work. By the time Alex reached his truck, his body was screaming with exertion, his leg wound burning in protest. Using the last of his strength, he created a ramp from some old boards and carefully transferred each foal into the truck bed. "Hang on," he told them, gently stroking the silver gray's damp neck. "Just hang on." The drive back to the ranch seemed endless. Alex constantly checking the rear-view mirror to ensure the foals were still breathing. The old stable behind his father's house wasn't much, but it would provide shade and shelter. As he pulled up to the weathered structure, he spotted an unfamiliar truck parked near the house. A white pickup with a veterinary logo on the door. A woman in her early 30s emerged from the house, shielding her eyes against the sun. She wore jeans and a light blue work shirt, her dark hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She approached with purposeful strides, curiosity turning to surprise as she saw the cargo in Alex's truck. "Mr. Winters," she called, "I'm Dr. Claire Reynolds. Your neighbor Frank Miller suggested I stop by to check on your fence line." She stopped short, eyes widening. "Those are Mustang foals. What happened?" "Found them abandoned in a ravine," Alex replied, his voice rough from thirst and exertion. "Someone left them today." Reynolds' professional demeanor took over as she quickly assessed the situation, climbing into the truck bed to examine the foals. "They're severely dehydrated," she said, checking the gums of the dun colt. "How long have they been out there?" "Don't know. From their condition, at least a day, maybe more." "We need to get them inside, cool them down, and get fluids into them right away," she said, already moving toward the stable. "Do you have a sheltered area?" Alex nodded toward the dilapidated structure. "The stable. It's not much, but it'll keep the sun off them." "It'll have to do. I have supplies in my truck. I was making ranch calls today." Together they carried the foals into the stable, placing them on fresh straw in the largest stall. Dr. Reynolds worked with quick efficiency, setting up IV fluids for the weakest foals while instructing Alex on how to prepare electrolyte solutions for the others. "These are newborns," she said, examining the dun colt closely. "No more than 3 weeks old. They shouldn't be separated from their mothers yet." "There were no mares around," Alex said. "Just these 5 left in the sun." Dr. Reynolds frowned as she noticed the markings on the foal's flanks. "These are identification codes," she said, tracing the numbers on the silver gray's hide. "WEG, Westridge Equestrian Genetics. I know that operation." "What is it?" "A large breeding and research facility about 50 miles from here. They specialize in performance horses for wealthy clients." Her expression darkened. "I used to work for them, actually. Left about a year ago over ethical disagreements." "What kind of disagreements?" Alex asked, helping her position the black colt for an IV. Reynolds met his eyes directly. "Their research practices, the direction the company was taking." She paused. "Finding these foals abandoned like this, it confirms my worst suspicions about what's been happening here." The silver gray colt nudged Alex's arm as if seeking reassurance. Without thinking, he stroked its neck, feeling the rapid pulse beneath his fingers. "Will they make it?" he asked quietly. Dr. Reynolds surveyed the 5 struggling foals. "The next 24 hours will tell. The dun and the black are in the worst shape. The others have a better chance." She studied Alex with newfound interest. "You were a soldier." Alex nodded stiffly, uncomfortable with the observation. "Your instincts saved these foals," she continued. "Not many people would have investigated or known what to do." "I'm not equipped for this," Alex admitted. "I haven't dealt with horses in years, not since I was a kid." "Well, Mr. Winters, you're all they've got right now," the Reynolds replied simply. "And they've got me for what it's worth." As if understanding her words, the silver gray colt raised its head and looked directly at Alex, its gaze steady and unblinking. In that moment, something shifted inside him. A feeling he hadn't experienced since before Afghanistan. A sense of purpose. "I'll need supplies," he said. "Feed, medication, whatever they need." "I can help with that," Dr. Reynolds nodded, "and I'll come back tonight to check on them." As Dr. Reynolds prepared a list of necessary supplies, the crunch of tires on gravel announced another arrival. A battered blue pickup pulled up, and an elderly Native American man emerged. He moved with the deliberate pace of someone who had seen many seasons, his weathered face deeply lined beneath a wide-brimmed hat. Frank, Alex acknowledged with a nod. Frank Miller was his nearest neighbor living on a small property adjacent to Lone Pine. He had been his father's closest friend, though Alex barely knew him. "Heard you might need some help," Frank said, his eyes taking in the scene in the stable. "Claire called me." Frank knelt beside each foal, examining them with experienced hands. When he reached the silver gray, he paused, his expression changing. "This one," he said, indicating the colt. "He has the mark." "The tattoo?" Alex asked, confused. "No, this." Frank pointed to a small white marking on the foal's forehead, barely visible beneath its forelock. It formed an irregular star pattern. In our stories, horses with this mark were spirit guides, messengers between worlds. We call it the soul mark. Alex hadn't noticed the marking before. "What does it mean?" "It means this is no ordinary foal," Frank replied. "The old ones would say he was born with purpose." He looked up at Alex, his dark eyes evaluating. "These 5 were abandoned, you say?" Alex explained what he had witnessed and showing Frank the photos and video on his phone. Frank's weathered face grew grave. "Westridge," he said, recognizing the tattoos. "They've been buying up land all over the county, pushing out small ranchers, draining water sources." Dr. Reynolds, or Claire, said she used to work for them. Frank nodded. "She's good people. Left when she found out what they were really doing." He gestured to the foals. "Now we know why." As night fell, Claire returned with supplies, and the 3 of them established a feeding schedule. Alex insisted on taking the night shift, moving an old recliner into the stable where he could monitor all 5 foals at once. Claire showed him how to bottle feed the weakest ones, demonstrating the technique with gentle precision. Every 2 hours, she instructed before leaving, even through the night, especially for the dun one, he's hanging by a thread. In the hushed darkness, broken only by the soft glow of a battery-powered lantern, Alex checked his watch. Midnight. Time for another feeding. He moved carefully toward the makeshift stall where the foals rested on fresh hay. The silver gray lifted its head immediately, ears pivoting to track Alex's movement. "Just me," Alex whispered. "Easy, buddy." The dun colt lay motionless, except for the shallow rise and fall of its ribcage. Alex knelt beside it, cradling its head as he coaxed the nipple of the bottle between its lips. The foal suckled weakly, its eyes remaining closed. "Come on," Alex urged. "Just a little more." Behind him, the silver gray watched intently, as if understanding the gravity of the situation. The chestnut filly had improved dramatically after just a few feedings, already showing signs of her spirited nature by pawing at the straw. The Palomino dozed peacefully. Her condition stabilized. The black colt remained skittish, retreating whenever Alex approached, but had managed to drink from a shallow pan. As he finished feeding the last foal, Alex heard the sound of an approaching vehicle, the distinctive purr of a luxury engine. He checked his watch, 1:20 a.m. No one should be visiting at this hour. Instinctively, he reached for the rifle he kept near by a habit from his military days and stepped outside. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows had parked in front of the house, its headlights cutting bright swaths through the darkness. A woman in an expensive-looking pantsuit emerged, her posture radiating authority. Even in the dim light, Alex could see she was attractive, in a cold, polished way, her blonde hair pulled back severely from her face. "Winters," she called out, spotting him by the stable. "I'm Victoria Collins, Director of Acquisitions at Westridge Equestrian Genetics." Alex's grip tightened on his rifle, though he kept it pointed downward. "It's past midnight, Miss Collins, not exactly business hours." She smiled thinly. "This is rather urgent. I understand you found some Mustang foals that belong to our breeding program." "I found 5 foals abandoned to die in the heat." Alex corrected, his voice hardening. "If they're yours, that raises some serious questions." Collins maintained her professional demeanor. "There's been an unfortunate misunderstanding. Those foals were part of a transport that had an accident. We've been searching for them. We're grateful you found them, and would like to collect them immediately. An accident, Alex repeated skeptically. That left them miles from any road with no sign of their mothers, conveniently marked with your company's identification codes. The details aren't important, she said dismissively. What matters is that they're West Ridge property. I have the paperwork in my car. We're prepared to compensate you for any inconvenience. Alex pulled out his phone and played the video he had recorded. This is what I found. 5 newborn foals deliberately abandoned in a ravine. That's animal cruelty, Ms. Collins. Collins's expression remained unchanged, but her eyes hardened. Mr. Winters, I don't think you understand. These aren't wild Mustangs. They're part of a proprietary breeding program worth millions. They belong to Westridge. Then you should have taken better care of them, Alex replied. Right now, they're staying here under a veterinarian's care. One might not make it through the night because of your accident. This is a mistake, Collins warned, her voice taking on an edge. Edward Westridge doesn't appreciate people interfering with his business. And I don't appreciate finding dying foals on my property, Alex countered. If you want to discuss this further, come back during daylight hours with a better explanation. They stared at each other for a long moment, the silence broken only by the soft nickering of one of the foals from inside the stable. Finally, Collins reached into her purse and extracted a business card which she thrust toward Alex. We'll be in touch, Mr. Winters. Soon. She turned on her heel and returned to the SUV, which reversed smoothly and disappeared down the driveway. Alex remained outside long after the taillights had vanished, his mind racing. The woman's arrival confirmed his suspicions. These foals were important to Westridge for some reason, and her story about a transport accident was clearly fabrication. Inside the stable, he found the silver gray standing alert, ears pricked forward, as if he'd been listening to the entire exchange. The foal locked eyes with Alex, and in that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. They'll be back, Alex told the foal, reaching out to stroke its neck. But I won't let them take you. As if in response, the silver gray leaned into his touch. And for the first time since returning from war, Alex felt the cold knot in his chest begin to loosen. That night, sitting in the old recliner, surrounded by the soft sounds of the sleeping foals, Alex drifted into the first peaceful sleep he'd had in months. No nightmares, no explosions, no Mike's eyes in that final moment. Just darkness and rest. He woke at dawn to find the silver gray standing beside his chair, watching him with those unnervingly intelligent eyes. Alex reached out to touch the white star marking on its forehead that Frank had pointed out. You need names, he said softly to the 5 foals. Can't keep calling you by your colors. He studied the silver gray colt, noting the intelligent gleam in its eyes. Spirit, he decided. That's you. Something otherworldly about those eyes. The chestnut filly nudged his arm hard enough to make him stumble slightly. And your Ember, all that fire inside you. The black colt watched warily from the corner, tensing when Alex looked his way. Shadow for you, dark and fast. The Palomino filly's gentle demeanor had been evident from the start, her patience remarkable as Alex tended to her needs. Goldie, he said, stroking her golden coat, bright even in the darkness. Finally, he knelt beside the struggling dun colt, whose life seemed to hang in balance with each shallow breath. And you're survivor, he whispered, because that's what you're going to do. The sound of a vehicle approaching drew Alex outside. Claire's white pickup pulled into the yard, followed by Frank's blue truck. They carried more supplies, hay, specialized feed medications, and soft blankets. How was the night? Claire asked, eyes scanning Alex's face for signs of trouble. 4 of them are holding steady, Alex reported. Survivor hasn't improved much, still barely drinking. Claire nodded grimly and followed him into the stable. After examining each foal thoroughly, she confirmed Alex's assessment. Spirit and Ember are fighters, she said. Goldie and Shadow are stabilizing, but Survivor, she shook her head. We're doing everything we can, but sometimes it's not enough. I'm not giving up on him, Alex said firmly. I didn't suggest you should, Claire replied, her voice softening. Just preparing you. She helped him change the bedding and showed him how to check for signs of infection around the tattoos on their flanks. Up close, Alex could see that the identifiers were precisely applied, so professional work, not makeshift tagging. I've been thinking about these markings, Claire said, examining the code on Spirit's flank, WEG X0572. This looks like a registration system, but it's not standard practice to tattoo foals this young, especially not Mustangs. Why would they abandon them? Alex asked, watching as Spirit nuzzled his hand, seeking attention. That's what bothers me, she frowned. Westridge is a multi-million-dollar operation. Edward Westridge doesn't make careless mistakes. These foals were left deliberately. But why, I don't know, she admitted. But I have contacts who might help us understand what's happening. While Claire stepped outside to make some calls, Frank helped Alex prepare the morning feeding. The older man moved with quiet efficiency, his hands gentle with the foals, despite their aged roughness. You knew my father well, Alex asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Frank nodded. Daniel was a complicated man, stubborn as they come but honest in his way. We didn't exactly see eye to eye, Alex said, his understatement hanging in the air between them. He was proud of you, Frank said simply. Never said it to your face, I'd wager, but he told me. Even kept newspaper clippings about your unit. Alex's hand stilled. He never wrote, never called. Like I said, complicated. Frank checked Survivor's breathing. He saw too much of your mother in you. It was hard for him. Alex's mother had left when he was 8, unable to bear the isolation of ranch life and Daniel's stern personality. Alex had only vague memories of her. A gentle voice, the scent of lilacs, the sound of her crying at night. I came back for his funeral, Alex said. Planned to sell the place and leave. Don't know why I'm still here. Frank's weathered face creased in a knowing smile. Don't you? Maybe these little ones can help you figure it out. The day passed in a blur of feedings, medication, and monitoring. By evening, all the foals except Survivor showed marked improvement. Spirit in particular seemed to gain strength, by the hour his silver coat beginning to show hints of luster. He followed Alex whenever he moved around the stable, watching everything he did with keen interest. Claire returned for the evening check, bringing surprising news. I spoke with a former colleague at Westridge, she said as they sat on the porch taking a brief break. He couldn't tell me much, too many non-disclosure agreements, but he mentioned that Westridge has been developing a specialized breeding program for Mustangs with particular genetic traits. What kind of traits? Alex asked. High performance, specific coloration, certain physical attributes, but most importantly, temperament. She took a sip from the coffee mug Alex had offered. They're trying to create the perfect horse. Wild appearance, but completely domesticated behavior. What does that have to do with abandoning foals? I'm not sure yet, she replied. My contact seemed frightened. Said I should drop it, that Westridge doesn't tolerate people asking questions. Alex looked toward the stable where the 5 foals rested. Well, I'm asking questions. Someone needs to answer for this. Claire studied him with newfound respect. You're not planning to keep them, are you? Once they're healthy, they should go to a proper rescue facility. I haven't thought that far ahead, Alex admitted. Right now, I just want them to survive. But even as he said it, he knew something had changed. These abandoned foals had awakened something in him, a protective instinct he thought had died in Afghanistan alongside his unit. Later that evening, as Alex prepared for another night in the stable, Frank returned with a small leather pouch. An old remedy, he explained, opening the pouch to reveal dried herbs. My grandmother taught me. Mix it with milk, helps strengthen a weak spirit. Alex hesitated, but something in Frank's confident manner made him trust the old man. I'll try anything at this point. They mixed the herbs with Survivor's next bottle, and to Alex's surprise, the foal suckled with slightly more vigor than before. No guarantees, Frank cautioned, but sometimes the old ways help. As night settled over the ranch, Alex found himself drawn to the stable office, a small room he had avoided since returning. It had been his father's domain, where Daniel Winters had kept the ranch records and personal papers. Dust lay thick on the desk and filing cabinets, undisturbed for months. Alex switched on the desk lamp and began to sort through the papers, looking for anything related to Westridge. In a bottom drawer, he found a folder labeled Property Documents. Inside was a contract dated 1 year before his father's death, an agreement with Westridge Equestrian Genetics for water rights on Lone Pine Ranch. The contract granted Westridge access to the underground aquifer that ran beneath the eastern portion of the property. In exchange, his father had received a substantial payment, enough to clear most of the ranch's debts. The document bore 2 signatures, Daniel Winters, and Alexander Winters as heir and co-owner. Alex stared at his own signature in disbelief. He had never signed this document. He hadn't even known of its existence. The signature was a skilled forgery close enough to pass casual inspection, but clearly not his hand. A cold anger settled in his gut. Westridge had manipulated his father, forged Alex's signature, and now wanted to take the foals that could expose their illegal activities. This wasn't just about animal cruelty anymore. It was fraud, possibly criminal conspiracy. He was so engrossed in the documents that he almost missed the sound. When a soft nickering from the doorway. Spirit stood there watching him. The foal had somehow managed to open its stall and the office door, both of which Alex was certain he had secured. "How did you get in here?" Alex asked, genuinely puzzled. Spirit merely gazed at him with those knowing eyes, then turned and walked back toward the stalls, looking over his shoulder as if expecting Alex to follow. When Alex returned to the stall area, he found Survivor struggling to stand his breathing, more labored than before. He quickly prepared another bottle with Frank's herbal mixture and spent the next hour coaxing the weakest foal to drink, speaking softly, encouraging it to fight. Spirit remained close, occasionally nudging Survivor gently with his nose, as if urging his companion to survive. The behavior was strange, far more aware and intentional than Alex would have expected from a newborn foal. Frank's words echoed in his mind. Horses with this mark were spirit guides, messengers between worlds. As the night deepened, Alex drifted in and out of sleep in the old recliner. In the space between wakefulness and dreams, he found himself back in Afghanistan, but the scene was different. Instead of the explosion, he saw Mike standing before him, whole and unharmed. "You've been carrying me too long, brother." Mike said, his voice as clear as if he were really there. "I couldn't save you," Alex replied. "Wasn't your job to save me. My choice, my sacrifice." Mike's form began to shimmer, changing, his features blurring. Some spirits can't rest until their work is done. Some souls need to find their way back. Alex woke with a start to find Spirit standing directly in front of him, forehead pressed against his chest, the white star marking seeming to glow faintly in the dim light. For a brief, disorienting moment, he could have sworn he saw Mike's eyes looking back at him from the foal's gaze. "Mike," he whispered, the name escaping his lips before reason could catch it. Spirit nickered softly, then turned to look at Survivor. The dun colt had finally fallen into what appeared to be natural sleep, its breathing more regular than before. Alex checked its vital signs: stronger pulse, better color. Whether from Frank's herbs, Claire's medicine, or something else entirely, Survivor seemed to have turned a corner. By morning, Alex was exhausted but cautiously optimistic. All 5 foals, including Survivor, had made it through another night. As Claire arrived for the morning check, her professional reserve gave way to surprised delight. "This is remarkable," she said, examining Survivor. "His hydration is significantly improved, temperature normal. I wouldn't have predicted this kind of turnaround." "Maybe he just needed a reason to fight," Alex suggested, watching as Spirit stood protectively near the smaller foal. Claire's attention shifted to the silver-gray colt. "There's something unusual about that one. The way he watches, how he interacts with the others. It's not typical foal behavior." "Frank says he has a soul mark," Alex mentioned, pointing out the star on Spirit's forehead. "Frank Miller is a wise man," Claire said thoughtfully. "His people have been working with horses since before Europeans arrived. Sometimes those old beliefs have truth at their core." As they tended to the foals, Alex showed Claire the contract he had found. "They forged my signature," he explained. "Westridge wasn't just after the horses. They want the water under Lone Pine." Claire's expression darkened. "That makes sense. Their new research facility would require massive water resources. They've been buying up water rights all over the county." She studied the document. "This is serious, Alex. Fraud for starters. Maybe more." "I need to report this," Alex decided. "The sheriff, at least." "Sheriff Anderson is a decent man," Claire agreed. "But be careful. Westridge has influence everywhere." Later that morning, Alex drove into town, the small community of Canyon Springs, about 20 miles from Lone Pine Ranch. It was his first trip into town since returning, and the familiar sights brought mixed emotions. The general store where he had bought candy as a child, the diner where his father would take him for rare treats, the feed store where Daniel had been a regular customer for decades. The sheriff's office was a modest brick building on Main Street. Inside, Sheriff Michael Anderson looked up from his desk, surprise registering on his weathered face. "Alex Winters," he said, rising to shake hands. "Heard you were back. Sorry about your father." "Thank you, Sheriff," Alex replied. "I need to report something." Anderson listened intently as Alex explained what had happened, finding the foals, the midnight visit from Victoria Collins, and the discovery of the forged contract. He showed the sheriff the photos and video on his phone. "Westridge," Anderson sighed, leaning back in his chair. "They've got their fingers in everything these days. Buying up land, diverting water. Not many people stand up to them." "This goes beyond business practices," Alex insisted. "It's animal cruelty and fraud at minimum." Anderson nodded slowly. "I believe you, son, but you need to understand what you're up against. Edward Westridge has judges, politicians, and regulators in his pocket. This won't be an easy fight." "I'm not looking for easy," Alex said firmly. "Just right." The sheriff studied him for a long moment. "Your father was starting to ask questions too, you know, about Westridge's water acquisitions. Week before his heart attack, he came in here with concerns about contamination in local wells." Alex felt a chill run through him. "You think there's a connection?" Anderson shrugged. "No evidence, just timing." He pulled out a notepad. "I'll file a report on the abandoned foals and the forged contract. Can't promise quick action, but it's a start." As Alex was leaving, Anderson called after him. "Watch yourself, Winters. And those foals, too. Westridge doesn't like loose ends." The warning followed Alex as he walked down Main Street, eventually stopping at Canyon Springs Feed and Supply. The owner, Dave Miller, was a heavy-set man in his 60s with a Vietnam veteran's cap and a permanent squint. "Winters," Dave acknowledged as Alex entered. "Heard you're running a horse nursery these days." "Word travels fast," Alex commented, selecting bags of specialized feed. "Small town." Dave shrugged. "Those Mustang foals causing quite a stir, especially since Westridge's people were in here yesterday asking questions." Alex's head snapped up. "What kind of questions?" "Wanted to know if anyone had been buying supplies for newborn foals. Seemed mighty interested in their whereabouts." Dave leaned on the counter. "I played dumb, never much cared for Westridge or his outfit. Man's been squeezing out local ranches for years." "I need to understand what I'm dealing with," Alex said. "How much do you know about Westridge Equestrian?" Dave glanced around the empty store before lowering his voice. "Official story is they're developing premium bloodlines for competition horses. Unofficial story is they've been manipulating Mustang genes for years, trying to create some kind of super horse they can patent and control." "Patent a horse?" "Not the horse itself, the genetic sequences. They started with BLM adoptions, but rumors say they've moved on to more questionable methods. Like abandoning foals that don't meet their criteria," Alex suggested. "Wouldn't put it past them." Dave nodded grimly. "Westridge doesn't tolerate imperfection. Man's obsessed with creating the perfect horse." As Alex loaded his purchases into his truck, he noticed a flyer on the community bulletin board outside the store. It showed a grainy photo of Edward Westridge shaking hands with a uniformed military officer. The headline read, "Westridge Genetics awarded Department of Defense contract. Local business brings jobs innovation." The image of military involvement sent a new ripple of unease through Alex. What could the Department of Defense want with horse breeding? The pieces weren't fitting together, but he sensed a darker pattern forming. Back at Lone Pine, Alex found Claire in deep conversation with a Native American woman he didn't recognize. She appeared to be in her early 40s with streaks of gray in her long dark hair and a guarded expression. "Alex," Claire called out as he approached. "This is Maria Redstone. She worked in Westridge's breeding division for 12 years before quitting last spring." Maria nodded curtly, her eyes constantly scanning the surroundings as if expecting danger. "Frank says you found some of Westridge's discards. I need to see them." Alex led her to the stable where the 5 foals were resting in the relative cool. Maria approached slowly, her focused gaze taking in every detail of their appearance. When she reached Spirit, she inhaled sharply. "The silver gray," she said, pointing to the small white star pattern on his forehead. This is why they want him back so badly. What does it mean? Alex asked. Maria knelt beside Spirit, who regarded her calmly. In the old stories, this marking signified horses that couldn't be broken. Westridge has been trying to eliminate it from their breeding program for years. They call it the resistance trait. Foals born with this marking consistently reject domestication, retain wild behaviors regardless of training methods. And the others? Alex asked, glancing at Ember Shadow Goldie and Survivor. All from the same bloodline. Westridge scientists identified a genetic sequence they believe correlates with the trait. They've been trying to breed it out through selective culling. Her voice hardened. I was told the rejected foals were being humanely euthanized or placed in sanctuaries. When I discovered they were simply being abandoned to die, I couldn't be part of it anymore. How many? Frank asked quietly from the doorway. Dozens over the years, Maria replied, her face grim. But these 5 are special. They're from their most advanced breeding program, the X Series. Supposed to combine the hardiness of Mustangs with complete trainability. But the resistance trait kept appearing, defying their genetic predictions. Why not just avoid this bloodline altogether, Alex wondered. Because it also carries traits they desperately want. Endurance, intelligence, adaptability. Westridge is obsessed with creating the perfect horse, one that looks wild but obeys without question. She stroked Spirit's neck with a sad smile. They call them defective, but they're actually the most perfect examples of what Mustangs truly are. Untamable spirits. That's why Westridge wants them destroyed. They undermine everything his program stands for. Would you testify to this? Alex asked. To the deliberate abandonment of foals that don't meet their criteria. Maria's expression clouded. Westridge ruined me when I left, blacklisted me from every equine facility in the state, threatened legal action over confidentiality agreements. I've been hiding for months. You're the key to stopping this, Alex pressed. Without your testimony, it's our word against a powerful corporation. Before Maria could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles drew their attention. Through the stable door, they could see a convoy of black SUVs pulling into the ranch yard, dust billowing behind them. They're here, Alex said grimly, instinctively moving to stand between the foals and the approaching threat. Maria paled. I need to leave. If Westridge knows I'm here. Wait, Alex interrupted. We need your help. These foals will die if Westridge gets them back. Maria hesitated, conflict evident in her expression. I can't fight them openly. They're too powerful. Frank placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. There comes a time when silence becomes betrayal. These foals survive for a reason. Maybe to give us all a chance to right a wrong. As they debated their options, Spirit suddenly raised his head, ears pricked forward alertly. The silver-gray colt pawed the ground and let out a clear, piercing whinny, a warning. Moments later, they heard it too. Doors slamming, voices giving commands. Decision time, Alex said quietly. Maria looked from the approaching convoy to the 5 foals huddled together in the stall, Spirit standing protectively in front of the others. Something in her expression shifted, resolution, replacing fear. I'll testify, she said firmly, but not just about the abandonment, about everything. The breeding program, the genetic manipulation, the patenting of wild horse DNA that should belong to the American people. All of it. Alex nodded gratefully. Claire, can you get Maria somewhere safe until we can arrange for her formal statement? My clinic has a back exit, Claire confirmed. We can slip out while they're focused on the ranch. As the vehicles drew closer, Alex turned to Frank. I need you to document everything that happens here. Use your phone, record every word. The elderly rancher nodded, pulling out his cell phone. They won't take those foals without a fight. Alex looked back at the 5 Mustangs one last time before facing the approaching confrontation. Spirit met his gaze, the colt's eyes reflecting a determination that matched his own. No, Alex agreed quietly. They won't. With Maria and Claire slipping out the stable's back door, Alex and Frank stepped outside to meet the convoy of vehicles now filling the front yard of Lone Pine Ranch. Sheriff Anderson had emerged first, his expression troubled. Behind him came 2 men in dark suits, followed by Victoria Collins, who wore a triumphant smile. Mr. Winters, the sheriff began, his discomfort evident. I have a court order demanding the immediate return of Westridge property. Specifically 5 Mustang foals identified with their registration numbers. Those foals were abandoned to die, Alex replied evenly. Saving them isn't theft. One of the men in suits stepped forward, extending a document. This is a court order signed this morning by Judge Reynolds authorizing the repossession of livestock identified with Westridge equestrian development markings. Alex didn't take the paper. Judge Reynolds signed this without hearing my side. Judge Reynolds understands the value of these animals to our research program, Collins replied smoothly. Now we can do this the easy way, or we can have you arrested for theft and obstruction. From behind, Alex Frank's voice rang out clear and firm. You're on private property, and those foals are evidence in an animal cruelty investigation. Collins turned her cold gaze to the elderly rancher. Mr. Miller's still interfering in matters that don't concern you, I see. Cruelty to animals concerns everyone, Frank replied evenly. The tension was broken by the arrival of another vehicle, a sleek silver sedan with government plates. A tall, distinguished man in his late 50s emerged, straightening his expensive suit jacket. His silver hair was perfectly styled despite the heat his tanned face set in a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. Edward Westridge, Frank muttered. The devil himself. Westridge approached with the confident stride of a man accustomed to getting his way. Mr. Winters, he said, extending a manicured hand. Edward Westridge, I believe we have a situation to resolve. Alex ignored the outstretched hand. Nothing to resolve. Those foals were abandoned to die. That's criminal. Westridge's smile didn't waver. I understand your concern. There was an unfortunate incident during transport, and we're grateful you found the foals, but they remain Westridge property, part of a research program that represents years of work and millions in investment. Research that includes leaving newborns to die if they don't meet your standards, Alex challenged. For a fraction of a second, Westridge's composed mask slipped, revealing something cold and calculating beneath. Then the smile returned. A serious accusation, Mr. Winters. Completely unfounded, of course. We value every animal in our breeding program. Then explain why these foals were abandoned miles from any road with no sign of their mothers or any transport vehicle, Alex pressed. Westridge glanced toward the stable, then back to Alex. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. I'm prepared to make you a generous offer for your inconvenience. They're not for sale, Alex stated flatly. Everything has a price, Mr. Winters, Westridge replied smoothly. Your ranch, for instance. I understand it's seen better days. My company could offer you fair market value plus a substantial premium. You could start fresh somewhere else without the burden of this struggling property. The offer caught Alex off guard. He looked around at the weathered buildings, the sagging fences. The place held more painful memories than good ones. Yet in the brief time since finding the foals, it had begun to feel like home again, in a way it hadn't for decades. Not interested, he said firmly. Westridge's smile tightened. I admire your principles, but you're fighting a losing battle. I have judges, politicians, and regulators in my corner. These foals will return to Westridge facilities today, tomorrow, or next week. The only question is how difficult you want to make it for yourself. Is that a threat? Alex asked quietly. A reality check, Westridge corrected. I understand you're a veteran. You've seen enough conflict. Why invite more into your life? Take the money. Walk away. From inside the stable came a sharp, clear whinny, spirit sounding almost like a challenge. Westridge's gaze shifted toward the sound, his expression hardening momentarily. The silver gray, he said. WEG X0572. He's particularly valuable to our program. His name is Spirit, Alex corrected, and he's not going anywhere. Westridge studied him with new interest. You name them. Becoming attached to research animals is unwise, Mr. Winters. They stop being research animals the moment you abandon them, Alex replied. Sheriff Anderson, who had been watching the exchange with growing discomfort, stepped forward. Edward, maybe we should take a step back here. If there are legitimate concerns about animal welfare, there aren't, Westridge cut him off sharply. And I would remind you, Sheriff, of our many contributions to this county's budget. He turned back to Alex. One last chance, Mr. Winters. Sign the foals over to me or face the consequences. Get off my property, Alex said quietly. Westridge's facade of civility vanished. Very well. Remember that you chose this path. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a folded document which he thrust toward Alex. A court order freezing all assets on this property, including livestock pending resolution of ownership claims. Signed by a federal judge this morning. Alex took the paper, scanning it quickly. This prevents me from moving the foals, but it also prevents you from taking them for now. Westridge conceded with a cold smile. But it also means you can't sell. This ranch can't transfer the foals to another facility, can't do anything without court approval. How long can you afford to care for 5 high-maintenance animals with your limited resources? Mr. Winter's time is on my side. With that parting shot, Westridge returned to his car, followed by Collins and the suited men. Sheriff Anderson lingered behind, waiting until the convoy had departed before approaching Alex. "I'm sorry about this," he said quietly. "My hands are tied. That federal order supersedes local authority." "You tried to warn me," Alex acknowledged. "I appreciate that." The sheriff lowered his voice further. "Watch your back, Winters. Westridge doesn't lose gracefully." He hesitated. "For what it's worth, I hope those little ones make it." After the sheriff departed, Alex returned to the stable, a strange mix of emotions churning inside him. They'd won a temporary reprieve, but Westridge had made it clear this was just the beginning. Inside, Frank was checking on the foals who had huddled together during the confrontation. Spirit stood at the front of the group, his posture alert and protective. "He's right about one thing," Frank said grimly. "Westridge has the resources to drag this out indefinitely. Then we need to find evidence he can't fight," Alex replied, determination hardening his voice. "Something so damning it won't matter how many judges he has in his pocket." As if in response, Spirit approached the stall door, pressing his muzzle against Alex's hand. In that simple gesture, Alex felt a surge of resolve. Whatever Westridge wanted with these foals, he would have to go through Alexander Winters to get them. And Alex had already survived one war. He was prepared to fight another if necessary. Morning arrived with a sense of foreboding that Alex couldn't shake. As he tended to the foals, administering their medications and preparing their formula, his mind kept returning to Edward Westridge's parting threat. The cold determination in the man's eyes told him this matter was far from resolved. Survivor had made it through another night, though his condition remained precarious. Frank's herbal remedy seemed to have helped, but the dun colt still struggled with each breath. Spirit stayed close to the weaker foal, occasionally nudging him, as if encouraging him to keep fighting. "Never seen anything like it," Claire commented, arriving for her morning check. "Spirit, you called him. He's acting like a herd protector. That's unusual behavior for a foal his age." "There's something special about him," Alex agreed, watching as Spirit positioned himself between them and Survivor ears flicking alertly. "They're all showing remarkable resilience," Claire said, completing her examination. "Considering what they've been through." Alex described Westridge's visit while the veterinarian listened intently, her frown deepening with each detail. "A transport accident. That's obviously a lie. These foals were systematically abandoned." She paused, thoughtful. "There's something Westridge said that's bothering me. He specifically mentioned Spirit by his identification number, called him particularly valuable. Why this foal above the others? Maria mentioned the resistance trait, the marking on his forehead. Said Westridge has been trying to eliminate it from their breeding program." "That might be it." Claire nodded. "If Westridge is breeding for specific behavioral traits, Spirit might represent something important to their program, something they're desperate to control." A soft nicker from Shadow interrupted them. The black colt had been the most traumatized of the group, but this morning he cautiously approached Alex for the first time, sniffing at his outstretched hand before retreating to a safe distance. "He's starting to trust you," Claire observed. "They all are." Small victories, Alex thought, though he felt a surprising surge of pride. After Claire left to attend other patients promising to return that evening, Alex decided to search his father's office more thoroughly. If Daniel Winters had been investigating Westridge before his death, there might be additional information hidden away. In the dusty confines of the small office, Alex methodically went through drawers and filing cabinets. Most contained mundane ranch records, equipment purchases, cattle sales, tax documents. But in a locked bottom drawer, which Alex had to force open with a screwdriver, he found a leather-bound journal he'd never seen before. The journal contained his father's cramped handwriting dating back several years. Most entries were brief notes about ranch operations, but about 8 months before his death, the entries changed. Soon. March 12th, met with the Peterson family today. Their well has gone dry just 3 months after Westridge bought the adjacent property. Coincidence, they're the 4th ranch this year with the same problem. March 20th, called the County Water Authority. They claim there's no connection between Westridge's operations and the failing wells. Too quick to dismiss if you ask me. Something's not right. April 8th, Frank introduced me to Dave Miller's daughter, Sarah. She works for the EPA. Says Westridge's water usage isn't properly documented. Promised to look into it unofficially. The entries continued documenting Daniel's growing suspicion about Westridge's water practices. The final entry was dated just 2 days before his fatal heart attack. May 15th, meeting with Sarah tomorrow. She says she found something big. Called Sheriff Anderson today about contamination in Johnson's well. Tests show chemicals not used in agriculture. Need to connect this to Westridge. Alex sat back, a chill running through him. His father had been investigating Westridge, and 2 days later, he was dead. A heart attack, the doctor had said. Natural causes. But the timing felt too convenient. The sound of a vehicle pulling up outside drew Alex from his thoughts. Through the window, he saw Frank's battered blue pickup and another car he didn't recognize, an older model sedan with out-of-state plates. Frank entered the office, followed by a professional-looking woman in her late 30s carrying a leather briefcase. Alex, this is Sarah Miller, Frank introduced. Dave's daughter. She works for the Environmental Protection Agency. Sarah extended her hand. Mr. Winters, I'm sorry about your father. He was helping me with an unofficial investigation. I just found his journal, Alex replied, showing them the book. He mentioned meeting with you. Sarah nodded grimly. We were supposed to meet the day after he died. I had information about Westridge's water usage and some concerning chemical compounds we'd detected in local wells. What kind of chemicals? Alex asked. That's the strange part. They're compounds typically used in pharmaceutical research, not agriculture or horse breeding. She opened her briefcase and spread several documents across the desk. I've been tracking Westridge's water consumption for 2 years. Their official filings claim they use approximately 50,000 gallons monthly for their operation, which is substantial but not unprecedented for a large equine facility. She pointed to a satellite image showing Westridge's main complex and surrounding properties. But according to our monitoring of the aquifer levels, they're drawing closer to 200,000 gallons monthly. The discrepancy is massive, and there's no record of what the additional water is being used for. Could it be simple theft using more than they're permitted? Alex suggested. Sarah shook her head. This goes beyond water rights violations. The chemical traces we've found suggest large-scale pharmaceutical production or testing, something that requires significant water resources but isn't part of their publicly acknowledged operations. Frank's weathered face had grown increasingly somber. Daniel suspected as much. He believed Westridge was using their horse breeding program as cover for something else. The Department of Defense contract, Alex said, suddenly remembering the flyer he'd seen in town. Westridge recently received a DoD contract. I saw it on a community bulletin board. Sarah's eyes widened. That would explain a lot. Military contracts aren't subject to the same oversight as civilian operations. She began gathering her papers. I need to report this to my superiors. With the information in your father's journal and what we've collected, we might finally have enough to justify a formal investigation. As Sarah prepared to leave, she paused at the door. Be careful, Mr. Winters. If Westridge realizes we're connecting these dots, they won't hesitate to protect their interests. Your father was a brave man. I think that's where you get it from. After she departed, Alex and Frank returned to the stable to check on the foals. To their surprise, they found Claire had returned with additional supplies and something unexpected, a portable ultrasound machine. Borrowed it from a colleague, she explained. I want to get a better look at Survivor's lungs. His breathing is still concerning me. As Claire set up the equipment, Alex pulled Frank aside. Do you think my father's death could have been not natural? Frank's expression remained carefully neutral, but his eyes betrayed concern. Daniel had a history of heart problems. The doctor found nothing suspicious, but the timing 2 days before he was supposed to meet with Sarah Miller with evidence against Westridge. I've had the same thoughts, Frank admitted quietly. But proving anything would be nearly impossible, especially now. Their conversation was interrupted by Claire's excited voice. Alex, Frank, look at this. They gathered around the ultrasound screening where Claire was examining Survivor. His lungs are showing remarkable improvement, she said. The inflammation is down significantly. And look here. She moved the wand to his heart. Strong, regular heartbeat. So he's going to make it? Alex asked, hope rising in his chest. I believe so. Whatever was in Frank's herbal remedy combined with the medications seems to be working. She moved to examine the other foals, finding them all in good health. At this rate, they should all be strong enough for limited outdoor time in a few days. The news lifted Alex's spirits. Despite Westridge's threats and the growing web of complications, the immediate goal remained clear: save these 5 innocent lives. Everything else could wait. As evening approached, Alex decided to make a supply run to town. The foals were stable enough to leave for a short time, and he needed more formula and bedding. He also wanted to speak with Dave Miller about his daughter's investigation. Canyon Springs was quiet as Alex parked in front of the feed store. The familiar Western storefronts along Main Street, the general store, the diner, the small sheriff's office stirred memories of his childhood. This town had once felt suffocating, to him too small and unchanging. Now, after years in war zones, its very predictability felt comforting. Dave Miller was closing up shop when Alex arrived, but he reopened the door when he saw who it was. Winters, he acknowledged with a nod. Sarah said she visited you today. Found what she was looking for. Some of it, Alex replied, stepping inside. Your daughter's taking a big risk investigating Westridge. Dave's expression hardened. Folks around here have been taking Westridge's abuse for years. Sarah's just the first with the authority to do something about it. He locked the door behind them and lowered his voice. She tell you about the chemicals, pharmaceutical compounds in the wells. Any idea what they're for? Dave gestured for Alex to follow him to the back room where he kept a small office. From a filing cabinet, he pulled out a folder. Been collecting news clippings about Westridge for years. Most folks think I'm just a paranoid old man, but Sarah takes me seriously. He spread several articles across his desk. One headline caught Alex's eye. Westridge Biotech Division secures military contract for enhanced performance research. Biotech Division? Alex questioned. I thought they were just horse breeders. That's what they want everyone to think, Dave said grimly. But about 5 years ago, they quietly established Westridge Biotech as a subsidiary. Very little public information, but they've been hiring biochemists and geneticists from across the country. Another article featured a photograph of Edward Westridge with a military general shaking hands at a ceremony. The caption identified the officer as General James Harrison, head of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency's Biological Technologies Office. DARPA, Alex murmured, a chill running through him. During his military service, he'd heard rumors about DARPA's more experimental programs, enhancements for soldiers that pushed ethical boundaries. Connect the dots, Dave said. Horse breeding focused on behavioral traits, pharmaceutical compounds in the water military contracts, and a biotech division nobody talks about. They're not just breeding horses, Alex realized. The horses are test subjects for something bigger. Dave nodded solemnly. Sarah thinks they're developing some kind of behavioral modification drug using the genetic research from their Mustang program. Something that could make soldiers more compliant, less likely to question orders. The implication struck Alex like a physical blow. Like eliminating the resistance trait Maria mentioned not just in horses but in humans. Exactly. And if your foals have genetic markers that resist this modification, they're evidence that the program doesn't work consistently. Alex finished, living proof of its limitations. Dave placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. You've stumbled into something bigger than animal cruelty, son. Much bigger. As Alex drove back to Lone Pine, his mind raced with this new information. What had begun as an act of compassion for abandoned foals had uncovered a conspiracy that potentially threatened human autonomy itself. The weight of this knowledge settled heavily on his shoulders. Arriving at the ranch, Alex was surprised to find Claire's truck still there hours after she'd normally have left for the day. Inside the stable, he found her sitting beside Survivor's stall, monitoring the small foal's breathing. Didn't expect you to still be here, Alex said, setting down the supplies he'd purchased. Claire looked up, her professional composure momentarily slipping to reveal exhaustion. I wanted to make sure Survivor stabilized before leaving. His breathing became labored again about an hour ago. Alex knelt beside her, concern etching his features. Will he make it? I think so. The setback seems temporary. She hesitated, then added, I also wanted to check something else, a theory I have about spirit. What kind of theory? Claire led him to where the silver-gray colt stood watching them, those intelligent eyes tracking their every movement. I've been reviewing the research I was involved with at Westridge before I left. The X-Series breeding program was focused on what they called behavioral plasticity, essentially how easily an animal's natural behaviors could be modified through both genetic manipulation and pharmaceutical intervention. Drugs to control behavior, Alex said, thinking of what Dave had just told him. Claire looked surprised. Yes, exactly. How did you know? Alex quickly shared what he'd learned from Dave and Sarah Miller about Westridge's biotech division and military contracts. That confirms my suspicions, Claire said grimly. The program I worked on was supposedly about creating horses with ideal temperaments for therapeutic riding programs, but the research parameters never made sense for that purpose. They were too focused on suppressing natural survival instincts. She approached Spirit, who allowed her to examine the white star marking on his forehead. This marking correlates with a specific genetic sequence that their tests couldn't modify. Foals with this marker consistently demonstrated what they termed behavioral resistance, an inability to be fully conditioned and away from their natural instincts. Is that why they abandoned them? Because they were failures. Not just failures, threats to the entire program. If this genetic sequence exists in Mustangs, it likely exists in humans too. It suggests there are natural limits to how much behavior can be modified, even with the most advanced techniques. Claire's voice lowered. That's not what military contractors want to hear. Spirit nickered softly, pressing his muzzle against Alex's hand. The gesture seemed almost deliberate, as if the foal understood the conversation. There's something else, Claire continued, watching the interaction. These foals, especially Spirit, seem to form unusually strong bonds with humans who treat them with respect. It's as if their resistance isn't to connection itself, but to forced compliance. They choose their relationships. Alex thought about his growing bond with Spirit, the way the foals seemed to understand him on a level that defied explanation. Free will, he murmured. They're protecting their right to choose. Exactly. And if Westridge is developing drugs to suppress that quality in soldiers, they're crossing a fundamental ethical line, Alex finished. The implications hung heavy in the air between them. This wasn't just about saving 5 foals anymore. It was about exposing a program that threatened the very essence of human autonomy. As night settled over the ranch, Alex found himself unable to sleep despite his exhaustion. Instead, he sat in the stable office reviewing the documents Sarah had left behind and his father's journal entries. The pieces were coming together, forming a picture more disturbing than he had initially imagined. A soft sound at the door drew his attention. Spirit stood there watching him. Once again, the foal had somehow escaped his stall, navigating the latch door with unexplainable dexterity. How do you keep doing that? Alex asked, genuinely puzzled. Spirit merely gazed at him with those knowing eyes, then walked into the office and stood beside the chair as if reading the documents alongside Alex. You understand, don't you, Alex said softly, what they were trying to do to you, why you're so important. In response, Spirit pressed it to his forehead against Alex's chest, the white star marking seeming to pulse with warmth. In that moment, something inexplicable passed between them, not words or thoughts exactly, but a profound sense of connection, of shared purpose. Alex closed his eyes, and unbidden an image came to him. Mike, his fallen friend, standing in desert camouflage, smiling that crooked smile that had always lifted the unit's spirits in the darkest moments. You've been carrying me too long, brother. Mike's voice echoed in his mind so clear, it might have been spoken aloud in the quiet office. I chose to stay behind so others could live. That was my purpose. Now find yours. Alex's eyes snapped open, heart racing. Spirit still stood before him, unmoving, those intelligent eyes fixed on his face. Mike, Alex whispered the name escaping his lips before reason could catch it. Spirit nickered softly, then turned and walked back toward the stalls, looking over his shoulder once as if expecting Alex to follow. That night, Alex dreamed for the first time in months without the accompanying horror of the explosion. Instead, he saw wide-open plains, wild horses running free under an endless sky, and among them a silver-gray stallion with a white star on its forehead, leading the herd to safety. He woke at dawn feeling more rested than he had since Afghanistan, a sense of clarity guiding his thoughts. They needed to act to gather evidence that would expose Westridge's operations before the corporation could silence them all. As Alex stepped onto the porch with his morning coffee, he saw an unfamiliar truck approaching a battered rancher's vehicle he didn't recognize. To his surprise, Sheriff Anderson emerged dressed in civilian clothes rather than his uniform. "Morning, Winters," the sheriff said, climbing the porch steps. "Hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," Alex replied, offering a mug of coffee. "Wasn't expecting you, though." Anderson accepted the coffee, glancing around to ensure they were alone. "Needed to talk to you off the record, not as the sheriff, but as someone who's lived in this county his whole life." They sat on the porch steps, the early morning light painting the landscape in soft gold. Anderson sipped his coffee, gathering his thoughts. "My grandfather ranched this land before the county was even properly established," he began. "Taught me that a man's responsibility is to the place he calls home and the people who share it with him." He paused. "Your father understood that. Started asking questions nobody else would." "About Westridge," Alex prompted. Anderson nodded. "Daniel came to me with concerns about water contamination. I did some discreet testing on my own, found traces of compounds I couldn't identify. Sent samples to a lab in Austin." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "Results came back yesterday. Pharmaceutical compounds used in neural pathway modification." Alex took the envelope, scanning the technical report inside. "Mind control drugs," he translated. "That's putting it bluntly, but essentially correct." Anderson's voice dropped further. "I've been getting pressure from the county commissioners to drop any inquiries related to Westridge. They're the biggest taxpayer in the region, employ hundreds of locals." "But you're still investigating." "Officially, no. Unofficially," he shrugged. "Let's just say I've been keeping notes, same as your father did." "Why tell me this now?" Alex asked. "Because you've got something Westridge wants badly enough to expose themselves. Those foals, especially the silver gray, represent a flaw in their program. Living proof that their methods don't work universally." Anderson finished his coffee. "And because Sarah Miller contacted me last night. She's bringing in a federal team, but it will take time. You need to hold out until then." "The court order freezes everything," Alex reminded him. "I can't move the foals to safety." "No, but you can document everything, build your case. Maria Redstone's testimony will be crucial if you can keep her safe." Anderson stood, placing his empty mug on the porch rail. "I can't openly help you, Winters, but I'm not your enemy." As the sheriff drove away, Alex felt a complex mix of emotions: gratitude for the unexpected ally, concern about the forces aligned against them, and a growing determination to see this through to the end. Inside the stable, he found Claire already at work, examining each foal with meticulous care. She looked up as he entered, a smile brightening her tired features. "Good news," she announced. "Survivors made remarkable progress overnight. All his vital signs are stabilizing." Indeed, the dun colt was standing on his own, wobbly but upright, nickering softly as Alex approached. The transformation from the dying foal he'd found in the ravine was astonishing. "They're all improving faster than I would have predicted," Claire continued. "I think they might be ready for some supervised time outdoors today. Fresh air and sunshine would do them good." Alex helped Claire prepare a small corral adjacent to the stable, creating a safe space where the foals could experience the outdoors while remaining protected. One by one, they led the young Mustangs into the sunshine. Shadow the black colt initially hesitated at the stable door, trembling slightly until Spirit nudged him forward. Goldie stepped daintily into the sunlight, her golden coat gleaming. Ember pranced excitedly, testing her growing strength with short bursts of speed. Survivor moved cautiously but steadily, gaining confidence with each step. Spirit was the last to exit, pausing at the threshold to survey the corral with those intelligent eyes before stepping regally into the sunshine. Once outside, he moved deliberately to the center of the space where he could watch over the others. "It's like he's already the herd leader." Claire observed, leaning against the corral fence beside Alex. He's barely a month old, but the others look to him for guidance. Frank says he has an old soul. Alex replied, watching as Spirit gently guided Survivor away from a rough patch of ground. Frank Miller is wiser than most give him credit for, Claire said with a small smile. She hesitated, then added, I've been thinking about what happens after all this if we succeed in exposing Westridge. What do you mean, these foals? They'll need a permanent home specialized care. They can never be truly wild again, but they shouldn't be separated either. Alex felt something tighten in his chest at the thought of the foals leaving. I've been thinking about that too, he admitted. Lone Pine has plenty of land water rights that Westridge hasn't managed to steal yet. It could be a sanctuary, I guess, for Mustangs that can't return to the wild. Claire studied him with newfound interest. You'd stay here. I thought you were planning to sell once this was over. Yeah, Ma, plans change, Alex said simply, watching Spirit lead the small herd in a circuit around the corral. Sometimes you find a purpose where you least expect it. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Frank's truck, followed by Dave Miller's vehicle. The two older men approached the corral, admiring the foal's progress. They're looking strong, Frank commented, his weathered face creasing in a rare smile. Especially Spirit. What's the news from town? Alex asked Dave. The feed store owner's expression grew serious. Westridge has been making inquiries about you, your military service. They're digging for dirt, anything they can use against you. Alex had expected as much. Let them dig. My service record is clean. That might not matter, Dave warned. They're spreading rumors that your PTSD makes you unstable, unfit to care for animals, setting the stage to challenge your credibility if this goes to court. The familiar cold anger settled in Alex's gut. Using his trauma against him was a low blow, but not unexpected. Corporations like Westridge fought dirty when cornered. We need to accelerate our timeline, he decided. Sarah Miller said she's bringing in a federal team, but we can't wait. We need to gather enough evidence to force an immediate investigation. What do you have in mind? Claire asked. Alex outlined his thoughts. Maria Redstone's testimony about the culling program combined with Sarah's water contamination evidence and my father's journal. But we need more concrete proof of what Westridge is really doing with their biotech division. You're talking about infiltrating Westridge, Frank stated, concern evident in his voice. Not necessarily, Alex replied, but we need someone on the inside, someone who can access their research data. All eyes turned to Claire, who had gone very still. I still have my access credentials, she said quietly. They never deactivated them when I left. Probably didn't think I'd ever risk coming back. It's too dangerous, Alex objected immediately. If they catch you, they won't, Claire interrupted, determination hardening her features. I know the facility layout, the security protocols. There's a backup server in the veterinary wing where they store research data. I could download it to a flash drive. Dave looked skeptical. Even with credentials, you'd be taking a huge risk. Westridge has tightened security significantly in the past year. I wouldn't be alone, Claire countered. I still have friends, they're researchers, who have ethical concerns but are afraid to speak out. One in particular, Dr. Patel, has been feeding me information since I left. The group fell silent, weighing the risks against the necessity of obtaining hard evidence. Finally, Frank spoke. Sometimes the right path is the most dangerous one, he said, his dark eyes fixed on Claire. But you shouldn't go alone. I'll go with her, Alex decided. We can create a diversion if needed. Claire shook her head. You can't. You're the only one the foals fully trust, especially Spirit. If something happens, they need you here. She turned to Dave. But I could use a driver who knows the area. Dave straightened, old military bearing showing through. Vietnam taught me a thing or two about extraction under pressure. I'm in. As they discussed the details of the plan, a new vehicle approached Sarah Miller's sedan, moving at high speed down the ranch road. She parked hurriedly and jogged to the corral, breathless with urgency. We need to move up our timeline, she announced without preamble. My supervisor received a call from someone high up in the Defense Department. They're shutting down my investigation, citing national security concerns. They can do that? Alex asked, disbelief coloring his voice. They already have. I've been ordered to turn over all my files and cease all inquiries related to Westridge. Sarah's expression was grim. I have until tomorrow morning and before I'm officially pulled off the case. Then we go tonight, Claire decided, her voice allowing no argument. Dave and I will access the research server. If we can get proof of what they're really doing, even the DoD can't keep it quiet. Alex felt a cold knot of dread forming in his gut. The stakes had just risen dramatically, and the danger was no longer theoretical. They were directly challenging powerful interests with the resources to destroy them all. As the group dispersed to prepare, Alex returned to the stable with the foals. Spirits separated from the others, approaching him with that uncanny awareness. "You know what's happening, don't you?" Alex said softly, stroking the silver gray neck. "What we're risking." Spirit pressed his forehead against Alex's chest, the white star marking warm against his skin. In that moment of connection, Alex felt again that inexplicable presence. Not quite Mike, not quite Spirit, but something between them, a bridge across worlds. "Keep them safe," a voice seemed to whisper in his mind. "Complete the mission." Military language, Mike's voice, but coming through this mystical connection with Spirit. Alex didn't question it anymore. Some things defied rational explanation, but were no less real for it. As evening approached, final preparations were made. Claire and Dave would leave at midnight when the West Ridge facility would be minimally staffed. Frank would stay at Lone Pine with Alex, helping monitor the foals and standing guard. Sarah would use her remaining authority to keep the evidence secure once they obtained it. Claire pulled Alex aside as darkness fell, her professional composure giving way to genuine concern. "If anything happens to me," she began. "Don't," Alex interrupted. "You're coming back." "But if I don't," she insisted, "the foals will need specialized care. Survivor especially." She pressed a notebook into his hands. "I've written everything down: medications, feeding schedules, developmental milestones to watch for." Alex took the notebook, his fingers brushing hers. "You'll tell me yourself when you get back." Claire met his gaze, and for a moment the professional distance between them dissolved. Without overthinking, Alex leaned forward and kissed her gently. To his surprise, she responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest. When they parted, Claire smiled, a genuine, unguarded expression he'd never seen from her before. "I've wanted to do that since I saw you carrying those foals into the stable," she admitted. "Come back safe," Alex said softly. "We have a lot to figure out." At midnight, Claire and Dave departed in his nondescript truck, armed with flash drives, Claire's access credentials, and a dangerous determination. Alex, Frank, and Sarah remained at the ranch, the hours stretching interminably as they waited for news. Alex checked on the foals repeatedly, finding comfort in their peaceful presence. Spirit remained unusually alert, as if sensing the tension in the air. Around 2 a.m., the silver-gray colt suddenly raised his head, ears pricked forward in alarm. He let out a sharp warning whinny that startled the other foals awake. Moments later, Alex heard it too. Vehicles approaching, their headlights off, moving slowly up the ranch road. "Someone's coming," he warned Frank and Sarah, who had been keeping vigil in the kitchen, "and they're trying not to be seen." Frank moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. 3 vehicles, maybe more. Not police, no light bars. "Westrid," Sarah said grimly. "They must have realized what we're doing." Alex's mind raced. Why would Westridge come in the middle of the night? The court order prevented him from moving the foals, and they had no legal grounds for a midnight raid. Unless they didn't care about legality anymore. "They're not here to talk," Alex realized aloud. "They're here to eliminate the evidence, the foals, my father's journal, all of it." "We need to call the sheriff," Sarah urged, reaching for her phone. "No time," Alex countered, grabbing his rifle from beside the door. "Frank, get Sarah and the foals out through the back pasture. Take my truck, the keys are on the hook. I'll hold them off." "You can't face them alone," Frank objected. "I'm not," Alex replied, a strange calm settling over him. "I've done this before. Go now." As Frank and Sarah hurried to the stable, Alex positioned himself on the darkened porch, rifle ready. The approaching vehicles, now clearly visible as black SUVs, stopped about 100 yards from the house, their occupants deploying with practiced precision. Even in the darkness, Alex could see they carried weapons, not police-issue sidearms, but military-grade rifles. This wasn't a legal action. It was an assault. Alex's military training took over, assessing threats, identifying cover, planning his defense. He was outnumbered and outgunned, but he had home field advantage and only needed to buy time for the others to escape with the foals. As the intruders began to advance toward the house, Alex fired a warning shot into the air. "This is private property," he shouted. "Leave now." The response was immediate and terrifying, a barrage of gunfire tearing into the wooden porch where he'd been standing seconds before. Alex rolled to cover behind a stone pillar, heart pounding. These men weren't here to arrest him or serve papers. They were here to kill. In the stable, Frank and Sarah worked frantically to lead the frightened foals out the back door. Spirit, however, refused to move repeatedly, turning back toward the house where Alex was under fire. He won't leave without Alex, Frank realized. The bond is too strong. At that moment, headlights appeared on the far road, a vehicle approaching at high speed. For a terrible moment, Frank thought Westridge had cut off their escape route. Then he recognized Dave Miller's truck, returning far earlier than expected. The truck skidded to a stop behind the stable, and Claire leapt out, her face pale with urgency. "We need to go now. Westridge knows they set a trap." Her words were cut off by another burst of gunfire from the front of the property. Dave emerged from the truck carrying what looked like an old military duffel bag. "Vietnam souvenir," he explained grimly, pulling out a flare gun. "Let's give those bastards something to think about." At the house, Alex was pinned down by increasingly accurate fire. The stone pillar wouldn't protect him much longer, but retreat meant abandoning his position between the attackers and the stable. He had to hold, had to give the others time to escape with the foals. A memory flashed through his mind: Afghanistan, the village Mike, making the same choice, staying behind so others could live. The symmetry wasn't lost on Alex, as he returned fire, carefully conserving his limited ammunition. Suddenly, a brilliant red flare arced over the property, illuminating the night in harsh crimson light. The attackers hesitated momentarily, blinded and exposed. In that instant of confusion, Alex heard the distinctive sound of a shotgun, Dave Miller, providing covering fire from the side of the property. "Winters," Dave's voice called out. "Fall back to the stable now." Alex seized the opportunity, abandoning his position and sprinting toward the stable as Dave laid down the suppressive fire. Inside, he found chaos. The foals nervously pacing Claire and Sarah, attempting to lead them out the back, while Frank stood guard with an ancient hunting rifle. "We need to go," Claire urged, grabbing his arm. "Westridge sent a security team to the facility too. They nearly caught us. They know what we're doing." "Did you get the evidence?" Alex asked, breathing hard from his sprint. Claire patted her pocket where a flash drive was secured. "Everything. Their entire research database. It's worse than we thought. They're not just developing behavior modification drugs. They're testing them on soldiers, veterans with PTSD, without proper consent." A bullet splintered the wooden wall of the stable, sending the foals into panic. Shadow reared in terror, nearly trampling Survivor. Spirit moved with unexpected purpose, herding the other foals toward the back exit. "He's trying to lead them out," Frank observed with amazement. "Follow him." As they prepared to flee, a new sound cut through the night, a helicopter, its searchlight sweeping the property. For a moment, Alex feared Westridge had brought in air support. Then he saw the distinctive markings of a law enforcement chopper. "Sheriff Anderson," Sarah realized aloud. "He must have heard the gunfire." The helicopter's presence changed the dynamic instantly. The attackers began to retreat toward their vehicles, unwilling to be caught in an illegal assault under the glaring searchlight. But the respite was short-lived. As the group led the foals toward the waiting trucks, a final act of malice unfolded. One of the retreating attackers tossed something toward the stable, a small object that burst into flames upon impact. The old wooden structure, dry from years of Texas sun, caught fire immediately. Flames leapt up the walls, spreading with terrifying speed. The foals, already frightened, became frantic at the sight and smell of fire. Spirit broke free from Claire's grasp, turning back toward the burning stable. To everyone's horror, Survivor had somehow been separated from the group and remained inside, trapped by advancing flames. "Survivor," Claire cried, moving to go after the foal. Alex grabbed her arm. "It's too dangerous." But even as he spoke, he saw Spirit disappear into the burning building, a silver streak against the orange flames. The sight of the burning stable triggered something in Alex, a flashback to Afghanistan, the explosion, Mike's final moments. His body froze, paralyzed by the sudden onset of PTSD symptoms. The world narrowed to a tunnel of fire and smoke, past and present blurring together. "Alex," Claire's voice seemed to come from far away. "Alex, we need you." Inside his mind, another voice spoke clearer, closer. "Move, soldier. The mission isn't over." Mike's voice as real as if he stood beside him. and with it came a flood of clarity breaking through the paralysis. This wasn't Afghanistan. These weren't the same flames, and this time he could save them. Alex surged forward, plunging into the burning stable after Spirit and Survivor. The heat was intense smoke already filling the space, but he could see Spirit standing over Survivor, who had collapsed near the back wall. The silver-gray colt looked up as Alex approached, eyes reflecting the dancing flames, the white star marking on his forehead gleaming like a beacon. Without hesitation, Alex lifted the weakened Survivor in his arms. Spirit pressed close against his leg, guiding him through the flames toward a path that remained clear. Together they emerged from the burning building into the cool night air, where Claire, Frank, Sarah, and Dave waited with the other foals. "We need to go now," Dave urged, helping Alex place Survivor in the bed of his truck. "The sheriff's chopper is keeping those thugs at bay, but they'll regroup soon." As they loaded the foals into the vehicles, Alex cast one last look at Lone Pine Ranch, his father's legacy, his childhood home, now partially engulfed in flames. The stable was nearly consumed and the fire had spread to one corner of the main house. It should have felt like loss, like defeat. But as Alex climbed into the truck beside Claire's Spirit standing vigilantly in the truck bed with the other foals, he felt only resolve. This wasn't an ending. It was the beginning of a new battle, one with higher stakes than he could have imagined when he first found 5 abandoned foals in a remote ravine. The convoy of vehicles pulled away from Lone Pine Ranch, heading not toward town, but deeper into the countryside toward Frank's property, where they would regroup and plan their next move. Behind them, the helicopter continued to circle Sheriff Anderson, providing what protection he could while maintaining official deniability. In the darkness of the truck cab, Claire reached over and took Alex's hand, her fingers intertwining with his. "You went back for them," she said softly, "even with your PTSD, with the fire triggering your worst memories." "I had help," Alex replied, thinking of Mike's voice cutting through his paralysis of spirit, guiding him through the flames. Some things couldn't be explained, only experienced. As they drove through the night, Alex glanced in the side mirror at the foals in the truck bed. Spirit stood watchfully, mane ruffled by the wind, eyes reflecting the distant flames of Lone Pine Ranch. In that reflection, Alex saw not defeat, but defiance, the untamable spirit that Westridge had tried to breed out of existence. They had the evidence now. The real fight was just beginning. Dawn broke over Frank Miller's modest homestead, painting the sky in hues of pink and gold that belied the tension gripping the small group gathered in his living room. Frank's property, 20 acres of rocky terrain, with a small house, a sturdy barn, and natural springs that had never run dry, had become their sanctuary after fleeing Lone Pine Ranch. Alex stood at the window watching the foals in the small corral Frank had hastily prepared for them. Despite the chaos of the night, all 5 had survived the journey. Survivor, though weakened by smoke inhalation, was recovering under Claire's attentive care. Spirit, as always, remained vigilant, positioning himself between the other foals and any perceived threat. "How are they?" Claire asked, joining him at the window. The veterinarian's face showed signs of exhaustion, but her eyes remained sharp and focused. "Better than expected," Alex replied. "Spirit hasn't rested, keeps watching the road like he's expecting trouble." "Smart animal," Claire murmured. "Wiser than most humans I know." In the living room behind them, Sarah Miller was hunched over her laptop, analyzing the data Claire and Dave had stolen from Westridge's servers. Frank and Dave sat at the kitchen table, cleaning their weapons, with the methodical precision of men who had seen combat decades ago, but never forgotten its lessons. "Got something," Sarah announced, drawing everyone's attention. "Project Compliance, that's what they're calling it. A behavioral modification program using compounds derived from their equine genetic research." The group gathered around her laptop as she navigated through encrypted files. "They've isolated the genetic markers associated with what they call resistance behavior in Mustangs, the same markers connected to Spirit's white star. Their goal was to develop drugs that could suppress these traits, creating horses that maintained their physical hardiness, but lost their wild instincts." "But they didn't stop with horses," Claire added grimly. Sarah nodded, opening another file. "Phase 2 involved adapting these compounds for human subjects. They've been conducting clinical trials on military veterans with PTSD, marketing it as an experimental anxiety treatment. The subjects weren't told the true purpose." Alex felt a cold weight settle in his chest. Mind control drugs tested on traumatized veterans. It gets worse, Sarah continued, her voice tightening. They've secured a massive Defense Department contract for what they're calling enhanced compliance therapy, a drug regimen designed to increase soldier obedience and reduce resistance to orders, even ethically questionable ones. Dave let out a string of colorful curses, using veterans as lab rats to develop a way to turn soldiers into robots. And people wonder why I don't trust the government. Does the data show whether it works? Frank asked a practical question, cutting through the outrage. Sarah scrolled through more documents. Results are mixed. The drug successfully suppresses natural resistance in about 60% of subjects, but a significant minority, roughly 30%, show complete immunity to its effects. The remaining 10% experience severe adverse reactions. Let me guess, Alex said. The immunity correlates with the same genetic markers found in spirit in the other foals. Exactly, Sarah confirmed. They call it the R gene complex, a set of interconnected genetic markers that, when present, render both horses and humans resistant to behavioral modification. Spirit and these foals have an unusually strong expression of these genes, which is why Westridge abandoned them. They were living proof that their program had fundamental limitations. And why they were willing to kill to get them back, Claire added. If the Defense Department knew their wonder drug doesn't work on a third of the population, the contract would be in jeopardy. Frank's weathered face had grown increasingly grim. So what's our next move? Westridge has already shown they're willing to use deadly force, and they likely have friends in high places. The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. They had the evidence, but exposing it meant challenging not just a powerful corporation, but potentially elements within the military and government. We need to go public. Alex decided, his voice firm. All of it, the abandoned foals, the illegal water usage, the unethical human trials, everything. Once it's in the open, they can't silence us all. Not that simple, Dave cautioned. They'll deny everything, claim the data was fabricated. Without irrefutable proof and credible witnesses, it becomes our word against theirs. Then we get irrefutable proof, Alex insisted. Maria Redstone's testimony about the culling program, combined with the evidence Claire and Dave obtained, plus my father's journal and Sarah's water quality tests. And we need the veterans who were experimented on, at least some of them, must realize they were misled. Sarah's fingers flew across her keyboard. The clinical trial records include names and contact information for all test subjects. 73 veterans, all with PTSD diagnoses. She looked up, her expression hesitant. But convincing them to speak out won't be easy. Most are still struggling with their trauma, and Westridge has likely presented the drug as helping them. I'll talk to them, Alex said quietly. Veteran to veteran. They deserve to know what was done to them. Claire placed a hand on his arm. That's dozens of people scattered across the country. We don't have time for that approach. Westridge is already moving against us. As if to confirm her words, Frank's ancient landline phone rang, startling everyone. The old rancher answered cautiously, listened for a moment, then handed the receiver to Alex. Sheriff Anderson, he said, his expression unreadable. Alex took the phone. Sheriff. Winters, Anderson's voice was low and tense. You need to know there's an arrest warrant out for you. Charges include trespassing, theft of corporate property, arson, and assault on security personnel. That's bull. I know, Anderson cut him off, but they're painting you as an unstable veteran who stole valuable research animals, then set fire to your own property when authorities tried to intervene. They shot at us. They burned my stable. Your word against theirs. And they've got deep pockets and friends in the prosecutor's office. Anderson paused. There's more. They're coming for the foals. Judge Reynolds signed an emergency order giving Westridge custody of the animals at Eurasia's valuable research property in imminent danger. Alex's grip tightened on the phone. When today, I'm supposed to lead the retrieval team myself. Anderson's voice dropped further. I can stall for maybe 24 hours, claim I need to gather adequate personnel. After that, my hands are tied. We understand. Thanks for the warning. Alex hung up, turning to face the others. We have 24 hours before they come for the foals with legal backing. He quickly relayed the sheriff's information, watching their expressions shift from shock to determination. We need to accelerate our timeline, Sarah said, already typing rapidly. I have contacts at several national news outlets. If we can get this evidence to them along with credible witnesses, that won't stop an emergency court order, Dave pointed out. They'll take the foals while the press is still verifying the story. Then we move the foals, Alex stated flatly. The court order covers the entire state, Claire reminded him. Anywhere we take them in Texas, they can legally seize them. Frank, who had been quietly contemplative, finally spoke. Not quite everywhere. All eyes turned to him. The reservation. Tribal land operates under different jurisdiction. State court orders don't automatically apply there. The Navajo reservation is hundreds of miles from here, Dave objected. Not Navajo, Frank clarified. There's a small Apache reservation about 70 miles north. My cousin Raymond is on the tribal council. If we can get the foals there, they'd be temporarily protected while we break the story. Would your cousin agree to that? Claire asked. It's asking him to take a significant risk. Frank's weathered face creased in a rare smile. Raymond has been fighting corporations like Westridge his entire life. They've been trying to access reservation water rights for years. He'll help. A plan began to form. Sarah would compile the evidence into a comprehensive package and contact journalists she trusted. Dave would drive Maria Redstone to meet with one of these reporters, providing first-hand testimony about Westridge's culling practices. Frank would arrange sanctuary for the foals on the reservation. Alex and Claire would transport the foals there using back roads to avoid detection. What about the veterans in the trial? Alex asked, still troubled by the thought of soldiers being used as unwitting test subjects. Sarah considered this. The data shows most of the trials were conducted at the VA hospital in San Antonio. The lead researcher is listed as Dr. Patel. Patel, Claire looked up sharply. Dr. Ananya Patel. She was my colleague at Westridge, the one who helped us access the servers last night. You think she'd be willing to come forward? Alex asked. She already has, Claire replied. By helping us get the data, she's essentially blown the whistle, and she has direct access to the veterans in the trial. Alex nodded slowly. Call her. If she can bring even a few veterans who are willing to testify about being misled, it strengthens our case enormously. With the plan set, they moved quickly. Frank made the call to his cousin, securing promise of sanctuary. Sarah packaged the evidence and made encrypted copies for security. Claire called Dr. Patel, arranging for her to meet them at the reservation with any willing veterans. As preparations continued, Alex stepped outside to check on the foals. The morning sun had risen fully now, bathing the small corral in warm light. Ember and Goldie were exploring their new surroundings while Shadow remained close to Survivor, who was resting in a patch of shade. Spirit stood at the fence, watching Alex approach with those intelligent eyes that seemed to comprehend far more than any animal should. We're going to move you again, Alex told the silver-gray colt softly. Somewhere safer, but it won't be easy. Spirit nickered quietly, pressing his muzzle against Alex's outstretched hand. The connection between them had grown stronger with each passing day, defying rational explanation. In moments like this, Alex could almost believe Frank's stories about spirit animals and reincarnated souls. They're remarkable, Claire said, joining him at the fence. Most foals their age would be traumatized beyond recovery after what they've been through, but they're adapting, surviving. Like their namesakes, Alex replied. He glanced at her profile, struck by the quiet strength she embodied. Thank you for everything you have done. You've risked your career, your safety, for the right reasons, she finished, meeting his gaze. That's what my father taught me. He was a veterinarian too in Vietnam. Said he saved more souls treating the strays around base than the Army chaplain did. The personal revelation surprised Alex. Claire rarely spoke about her past. You never mentioned your father before. He died last year, cancer. Her voice softened. He would have loved these foals, especially Spirit. Alex's hand found hers on the fence rail, their fingers intertwining naturally. When this is over, if we succeed, one step at a time, soldier, she interrupted gently. First we save the foals, then we expose Westridge. After that, she squeezed his hand, we'll figure out the rest. By early afternoon, preparations were complete. 2 trailers had been secured, one for the foals, driven by Alex and Claire, and another carrying supplies and equipment driven by Frank. Sarah would remain behind temporarily to coordinate with the press before joining them at the reservation. Loading the foals proved surprisingly straightforward. Spirit led the way, seeming to understand the urgency of their situation, and the others followed his lead. Even Shadow, still the most skittish of the group, entered the trailer without significant resistance. As they prepared to depart, Dave pulled Alex aside. "Take this," he said, pressing a small revolver into Alex's hand, "just in case." Westridge has already shown they're playing for keeps. Alex weighed the weapon, memories of combat briefly flashing through his mind. "Let's hope it doesn't come to that." "Hope for the best, prepare for the worst," Dave replied, the old soldier's pragmatism evident in his voice. "I'll meet you at the reservation once Maria and I have spoken with Sarah's journalist contact." The small convoy departed Frank's property shortly after taking a circuitous road of back roads and farm-to-market highways to avoid main thoroughfares where they might be spotted. Alex drove cautiously, aware of the precious cargo they carried. Beside him, Claire monitored a map guiding them along the safest path to the reservation. "How are they doing?" Alex asked, nodding toward the trailer they towed. Claire checked the small camera they had installed inside. "Calm, surprisingly. Spirit is standing in the center, keeping the others steady. It's almost like he's done this before." The observation hung in the air between them, another piece of the inexplicable puzzle that was the silver-gray colt. Neither spoke it aloud, but both felt it. There was something extraordinary about Spirit, something that transcended normal animal behavior. They had been driving for about 2 hours, the landscape gradually changing from flat farmland to more rugged terrain, when Claire suddenly straightened in her seat. "Black SUV about half a mile back," she said tensely. "It's been following the same turns we have for the past 20 minutes. Alex checked the rearview mirror, spotting the vehicle in question. Could be coincidence. 3 identical black SUVs in a row. Not likely. Sure enough, 2 more similar vehicles had appeared behind the first, maintaining a consistent distance. Too far to be casual travelers, too close to be anything but surveillance. "Westridge," Alex confirmed grimly. "They must have been watching Frank's place. Call Frank and warn him." As Claire made the call, Alex assessed their options. The road ahead forked in about a mile, one path continuing toward the reservation, the other leading into more populated areas. If they maintained their current route, they'd be leading Westridge directly to their sanctuary. "Frank's seen them too," Claire reported, hanging up. "He says there's an old ranch access road about 3 miles ahead that cuts through to the reservation from a different direction. It's rough terrain, but his truck can handle it." "What about our trailer?" "Those foals will get tossed around if the road's too rough." Claire bit her lip, considering. "We don't have many choices. If we stay on the main road, they'll follow us right to the reservation. If we try to outrun them, the trailer could become unstable at high speeds." Alex made a quick decision. "Tell Frank to take the access road. We'll continue on the main route and draw them away from him. Once the foals are safe, we can lose our tail and double back." Claire relayed the plan to Frank, who reluctantly agreed. As they approached the fork in the road, Frank's truck took the left path, heading toward the hidden access road, while Alex and Claire continued straight, the empty trailer still attached to maintain their cover. The ruse worked, at least partially. 2 of the SUVs continued following Alex and Claire, but the third broke off to pursue Frank. "They've split up," Claire observed, tension evident in her voice. "One's following Frank." Alex pressed harder on the accelerator, drawing the remaining pursuers further from Frank's position. He knows the terrain better than they do. He'll lose them in the backcountry. "And us, what's our plan?" Alex hadn't thought that far ahead. Their immediate goal had been to separate from Frank and the foals to ensure their safe passage to the reservation. Now they needed to evade their own pursuers long enough to circle back. "There's a small town about 15 miles ahead," Claire said, studying the map. "Canyon Creek. If we can reach it, we might lose them in more populated areas." It was their best option. Alex pushed the truck to its limits, maintaining a lead on the pursuing vehicles without reaching dangerous speeds with the trailer. Behind them, the SUVs matched their pace, neither gaining nor falling back, professional pursuit vehicles with powerful engines. "They're not trying to catch us," Alex realized aloud. "They're hurting us." The observation proved prescient. As they approached Canyon Creek, a roadblock appeared ahead, two more black SUVs positioned across the highway, leaving no space to pass. Behind them, their pursuers closed the distance, boxing them in. Alex was forced to brake, bringing their truck to a stop about 50 yards from the roadblock. Men in tactical gear emerged from the vehicles, weapons drawn, but not yet aimed directly at them. "What now?" Claire asked, her voice remarkably steady despite the circumstances. Before Alex could answer, a familiar silver sedan pulled alongside the roadblock. Edward Westridge emerged impeccably dressed, as always, his expression a mask of cold authority. "They want to talk," Alex observed. "Otherwise, they would have forced us off the road miles ago." "Talk or threaten?" "Probably both." Alex weighed their options. The empty trailer meant the foals were safe for now, but being detained would prevent them from rejoining Frank at the reservation. "Stay in the truck. If things go south, be ready to move." Alex stepped out of the vehicle, standing beside the driver's door. He made no move toward Westridge, forcing the older man to approach him, instead a small psychological advantage. "Mr. Winters," Westridge called, walking forward with the confident stride of a man accustomed to getting his way. "This has gone far enough. Don't you think no one needs to get hurt today?" "Bit late for that concern," Alex replied evenly. "Your men shot at us and burned down my ranch last night." Westridge waved a dismissive hand. "Unfortunate excesses by overzealous security personnel. They've been disciplined." He stopped about 10 feet from Alex. "But we both know this situation has escalated beyond what either of us intended." "What do you want, Westridge?" "The same thing I've always wanted: my property returned, and this matter resolved quietly." His cold eyes fixed on Alex. "Where are the foals, Mr. Winters?" "Safe, beyond your reach." A flicker of annoyance crossed Westridge's composed features. "Nothing is beyond my reach, Lieutenant. Surely your military experience taught you that. Power always prevails in the end." "Is that what you tell the veterans you experiment on, without their consent?" Alex countered. "The ones you're using as lab rats for your behavioral control drugs?" For the first time, genuine surprise registered on Westridge's face. "You've been busy," he acknowledged. "But whatever you think you know, whatever evidence you believe you've acquired, it won't matter. Project compliance has the highest levels of authorization. National security concerns override ethical considerations." "That's where you're wrong," Alex said firmly. "Nothing overrides ethical considerations. Not profit, not military contracts, not even national security." Westridge studied him with cold calculation. "You're an idealist, Lieutenant. The world doesn't work according to such simplistic moral frameworks. Progress requires sacrifice. The greater good demands difficult choices." "Spare me the villain's monologue," Alex interrupted. "We have your research data, testimony from your former employees, and evidence of your illegal activities. It's already being packaged for national media." This clearly wasn't news Westridge wanted to hear. His composed facade cracked slightly, revealing the ruthless businessman beneath. "You have no idea what forces you're challenging. This goes beyond Westridge Equestrian. There are powerful people invested in project compliance, people who won't hesitate to destroy you and everyone helping you." "Are you threatening us?" "I'm offering you one last opportunity," Westridge countered. "Return the foals and the research data. In exchange, all charges against you will be dropped. You'll receive generous compensation for your ranch, and Dr. Reynolds will be offered a prestigious position at a research facility of her choosing." His voice hardened. "Refuse, and I cannot guarantee your safety or freedom." Alex considered the offer for exactly 1 second before responding. "Not interested." Westridge's expression darkened. "Then you leave me no choice." He gestured to the armed men surrounding them. "Lieutenant Winters, you are under arrest for theft of corporate property, industrial espionage, and obstruction of a federal research program." "You don't have the authority to arrest anyone," Claire called out, having rolled down her window to hear the exchange. "Perhaps not personally," Westridge conceded, "but my associates from Homeland Security certainly do." On cue, one of the men stepped forward, producing what appeared to be federal credentials. "Homeland Security, Special Projects Division. You're both being detained under Section 802 of the Patriot Act for interfering with a classified defense project." Alex felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. If Westridge had Homeland Security involvement, their situation was even more precarious than he'd realized. This wasn't just a corporate cover-up, it was a government-sanctioned operation. Before he could respond, the sound of approaching vehicles drew everyone's attention. A convoy of police cars appeared on the horizon, lights flashing. Leading them was a familiar patrol vehicle, Sheriff Anderson's cruiser. Westridge looked annoyed but not particularly concerned. The local authorities won't change anything. This is now a federal matter. The sheriff's cruiser pulled up alongside the roadblock, and Anderson emerged, his expression unreadable. He approached slowly, taking in the scene with experienced eyes. "Mr. Westridge," he acknowledged with a nod, "quite the operation you've got here. Mind telling me why you're conducting armed roadblocks in my county without notification?" "This is a federal security matter, Sheriff," the Homeland agent interjected. "We have jurisdiction." Anderson didn't even glance at the man. "On my roads in my county, you have courtesy, not jurisdiction. That requires proper channels and notifications, none of which I received." He turned to Alex. "You all right, Winters?" "Been better," Alex replied honestly. The sheriff nodded, then addressed Westridge again. "I'm going to need to see proper documentation for this operation. Authorization for an armed roadblock detention orders, the works." "This is absurd," Westridge snapped. "We don't have time for bureaucratic niceties." "That's where you're wrong, Mr. Westridge," Anderson replied calmly. "The law isn't a nicety. It's what separates us from tyranny." He gestured to his deputies who had positioned themselves strategically around the scene. "Now either produce the proper documentation or dismantle this illegal roadblock immediately." The standoff hung in tense silence for several long moments. Finally, the Homeland agent stepped forward, speaking quietly to Westridge. Whatever he said caused the businessman's face to tighten with anger, but he eventually nodded curtly. "We'll continue this discussion through proper channels," Westridge announced coldly. "But don't mistake this for victory, Winters. You've merely postponed the inevitable." With that, he returned to his sedan. The roadblock vehicles slowly pulled aside, allowing passage once more. The armed men returned to their SUVs, maintaining hostile glares but following orders. As the Westridge convoy regrouped and departed, Sheriff Anderson approached Alex and Claire. "That won't hold them for long," he warned quietly. "My jurisdiction challenge was legitimate but temporary. Once they make a few calls and file the proper paperwork, they'll be back with full authority." "How much time do we have?" Alex asked. "A few hours at most. They'll need to coordinate with the state police, get formal written orders." Anderson glanced meaningfully at their empty trailer. "I see your cargo has been diverted." Alex didn't confirm or deny this, but his expression must have conveyed something because Anderson nodded slightly. "Good. Keep it that way." The sheriff handed Alex a folded piece of paper. "Ranger station at Broken Ridge. Friend of mine runs it. Tell him Michael sent you. He'll help you disappear for a while if needed." "Why are you doing this?" Claire asked. "You're risking your badge." Anderson's weathered face hardened. 20 years wearing this star, I've learned one thing: the law is meant to protect people, not powerful interests. Whatever Westridge is doing, it's wrong enough that they're willing to burn down ranches and set up armed checkpoints to cover it up." He stepped back toward his cruiser. "I'll delay them as long as I can. The rest is up to you." After the sheriff departed, Alex and Claire quickly discussed their options. With the roadblock cleared, they could continue to Canyon Creek as planned, then circle back toward the reservation using alternate routes. The confrontation had cost them time, but it had also confirmed the gravity of their situation. Westridge had federal connections willing to invoke national security to protect project compliance. "We need to warn the others," Claire said as they drove toward Canyon Creek. "If Homeland Security gets involved, the reservation might not provide as much protection as we hoped." "First things first," Alex replied. "We need to make sure Frank and the Foals made it safely. Then we regroup and accelerate the timeline for going public." They reached Canyon Creek without further incident, a small town of about 2,000 people with a main street lined with modest businesses and a single traffic light. Alex pulled into the parking lot of a local diner seeking both refuge and a place to make secure calls. Inside, they ordered coffee and used Claire's phone to contact Frank, careful to speak in generalities in case of surveillance. "Packages delivered safely," Frank reported. "Raymond welcomed us with open arms. But there's something you should know. The special one has been acting strangely since arrival. Very agitated, keeps looking eastward, almost like he's waiting for something. Or someone." Alex felt a tug of concern. "Spirit," he said after hanging up. Something's wrong with him. He's probably just unsettled by the move, Claire suggested, though her voice lacked conviction. Both of them had witnessed enough of Spirit's unusual awareness to doubt simple explanations. As they finished their coffee and prepared to depart, Alex noticed a television mounted in the corner of the diner tuned to a news channel. The closed captioning caught his attention. Breaking news: whistleblower exposes military contractors' unethical human experiments. Claire, he said quietly, nodding toward the screen. The broadcast showed Sarah Miller standing beside a distinguished-looking Indian woman, presumably Dr. Patel, addressing a group of reporters. The caption identified them as EPA investigator, informer Westridge researcher, expose unauthorized drug trials on veterans. They did it, Claire breathed. They got the story out. The diner's other patrons had begun to notice the broadcast as well, conversations dying down as people turned to watch. The manager increased the volume, allowing the reporter's voice to fill the room. Allegations include illegal testing of experimental behavioral modification drugs on veterans without proper consent, falsification of research data, and corporate espionage. The Department of Defense has suspended all contracts with Westridge Biotech pending investigation, and the FDA has ordered an immediate halt to all clinical trials of the compound known as Compliance X. Alex and Claire exchanged glances of cautious hope. The public exposure changed the dynamic significantly. With national media attention, Westridge could no longer operate in the shadows. Their momentary relief was shattered by Alex's phone ringing, Frank's number flashing on the screen. "We've got trouble," the old rancher said without preamble. "Homeland Security agents just arrived at the reservation. They're demanding the foals be surrendered as critical research subjects under national security protocols. Raymond is stalling them with tribal sovereignty issues, but it won't hold for long." Alex's mind raced. What about Spirit? Is he still agitated? Worse now, he's trying to break out of the corral. It's like he knows they're coming for him. "Keep him contained if you can. We're on our way." Alex hung up and quickly explained the situation to Claire. Westridge is making a last desperate play. With the story breaking, they need to secure the foals before their genetic resistance becomes public knowledge. They rushed back to their truck, abandoning the now empty trailer to increase their speed. Claire navigated while Alex drove, pushing the vehicle to its limits along the rural highways leading to the reservation. Even with the story breaking, why would Homeland Security still be involved? Claire wondered aloud. Surely they'd want to distance themselves from a scandal. Unless Westridge has something on them, Alex theorized, or unless Project Compliance goes higher up the chain than we realized. Military brass who have already invested too much to let it fail. The Apache Reservation appeared on the horizon, a modest collection of buildings surrounded by scrubland and low hills. As they approached, they could see several black SUVs parked near the Tribal Administration building, confirming Frank's warning. Alex parked some distance away, not wanting to announce their arrival. "We need to get to the foals without being spotted." "Raymond's house is on the far side of the community," Claire said, recalling Frank's directions. "If we circle around through those hills, we might approach from behind." They proceeded on foot, using the natural terrain for cover. As they crested a small rise, they gained a clearer view of Raymond's property, a modest house with a large corral behind it. Inside the corral, they could see the foals, with Spirit pacing restlessly along the fence line, his silver coat gleaming in the afternoon sun. Frank stood nearby, engaged in what appeared to be a heated discussion with Raymond and two men in suits, presumably the Homeland Security agents. Several tribal police officers were also present, their stance suggesting they were siding with Raymond against the federal agents. "We need a distraction," Alex muttered, assessing the situation. "Something to draw their attention while we move the foals." Before Claire could respond, Spirit suddenly reared up, letting out a piercing whinny that carried across the distance. The silver-gray colt pawed at the ground, then charged the corral fence with unexpected force, splintering the wooden rails and breaking through. "No," Claire gasped. But instead of fleeing, Spirit circled back, positioning himself by the gap he'd created. One by one, the other foals followed him through the opening. First Ember, then Goldie and Shadow with Survivor bringing up the rear, moving with surprising strength for an animal that had been at death's door just days before. The commotion drew everyone's attention. Frank and the others turned toward the escaping foals, the agents reaching for their weapons instinctively. Now's our chance, Alex said, pulling Claire toward Raymond's house. We need to reach Frank. They sprinted down the hill using the distraction to approach unnoticed. By the time they reached Frank's side, a remarkable scene was unfolding. Spirit had led the other foals in a tight circle around the property, not fleeing but rather creating chaos running between vehicles, causing the agents to scatter, then doubling back toward the house. What the hell is happening? One agent demanded, trying unsuccessfully to intercept Shadow as the black colt darted past him. Frank spotted Alex and Claire, relief evident in his weathered features. About time you showed up, your silver friends causing quite the commotion. Spirit broke out deliberately, Claire observed with amazement. He's creating a diversion. As if confirming her words, Spirit suddenly changed direction, leading the small herd directly toward them. The foals moved with perfect coordination, responding to subtle cues from their leader that human observers couldn't detect. They're coming to us, Alex realized. We need to be ready to move. Raymond Miller, Frank's cousin and a tribal elder in his 70s, approached them quickly. My nephew's truck is behind the house keys in the ignition. Take the North Trail. It connects to County Road 22 about 10 miles up. These federal agents have no jurisdiction on that route. What about you? Frank asked. They'll know you helped us. Raymond's leathered face creased in a smile. Let an old man worry about that. We've been dealing with government overreach for generations. Besides, he nodded toward the tribal police. Our officers answer to the tribal council, not Washington. Spirit had nearly reached them, the other foals close behind. With perfect timing, the silver-gray colt slowed, allowing Alex to catch his halter. The others gathered around, seemingly awaiting direction. This way, Alex urged, leading Spirit toward the back of the house where Raymond's truck waited. Claire and Frank followed, guiding the remaining foals. Behind them, shouts of confusion and anger rose from the Homeland Security agents as they realized what was happening. One started toward them, hand moving to his weapon, but was intercepted by a tribal officer. This is sovereign land, the officer stated firmly. You have no authority to discharge weapons here. The momentary standoff gave Alex and the others the time they needed. Raymond's truck was an old but well-maintained pickup with an open bed large enough for the 5 foals if they stood close together. With practiced efficiency, they helped the young Mustangs into the vehicle. I'll drive, Frank insisted, taking the keys from Alex. I know these back trails better than either of you. There was no time to argue. Alex and Claire climbed into the passenger side while Frank started the engine. Spirit, standing in the truck bed with the other foals, remained eerily calm, as if he understood exactly what was happening. As they pulled away from Raymond's house, Alex glanced back to see the Homeland agents rushing toward their vehicles, prepared to give chase. But the tribal police had positioned their cruisers to block the driveway, creating another delay. Raymond's buying us time, Frank explained as he navigated the narrow dirt trail leading away from the reservation. But it won't last long. Those agents will call for backup, maybe even helicopters. Where are we going? Claire asked, bracing herself as the truck bounced over the rough terrain. Broken Ridge, Alex decided, remembering Sheriff Anderson's note. The ranger station. It's our best option for now. Frank nodded grimly, accelerating. The trail widened slightly. Behind them, the foals maintained their balance with surprising agility, Spirit standing protectively in the center of the group. They had been driving for about 20 minutes, the reservation well behind them, when Claire's phone rang. The caller ID showed Sarah Miller's number. Sarah, Claire answered, putting the call on speaker. We saw the news. You got the story out. It's exploding, Sarah replied, her voice tense with excitement. 3 major networks are running it, and the New York Times is publishing a front-page expose tomorrow. Dr. Patel brought 5 veterans with her who testified about being misled about the drug trials. The FDA has suspended all Westridge pharmaceutical licenses pending investigation. What about Westridge himself? Alex asked. Gone underground, but it gets better. The Defense Department is distancing itself from the whole operation, claiming they were misled about the nature of the research. They've terminated all contracts with Westridge Biotech and are conducting an internal investigation into who authorized project compliance. So it's over? Claire asked hopefully. Sarah's hesitation was answer enough. Not quite. There's still a faction within Homeland Security that's classifying the foals as critical research assets under national security protocols. They're particularly fixated on the one you call Spirit. something about his genetic profile being unique even among the resistant population. Alex exchanged glances with Frank and Claire. We're moving them to a secure location. Once there, we'll need to figure out our next steps. Be careful, Sarah warned. The story breaking changes the public dimension, but it might make certain elements more desperate. If Spirit truly represents a genetic line that completely resists behavioral modification, some people will consider that a threat to national security rather than a natural protection of free will. After ending the call, they continued in tense silence, each processing the implications. The main road appeared ahead, County Road 22, just as Raymond had described. Frank turned onto it, increasing their speed now that they were on paved surface. How far to Broken Ridge? Claire asked. About 30 miles. Frank replied, checking the fuel gauge. We should make it before dark. As they drove, Alex kept a watchful eye on the foals through the rear window. All five had settled into a rhythm, with the truck's movement conserving energy for whatever lay ahead. Spirit's eyes remained alert, scanning their surroundings with unnerving intelligence. The landscape gradually changed as they approached Broken Ridge, flat scrubland, giving way to rocky terrain and scattered pine forests. The road wound upward, following natural contours of the land until they reached a wooden sign announcing Broken Ridge Ranger Station 3 miles. Almost there, Frank announced, relief evident in his voice. The moment of optimism was short-lived. As they rounded a bend, they encountered a roadblock ahead, not the black SUVs of Westridge or Homeland Security, but two state police cruisers positioned across the road. Officers stood beside their vehicles, hands resting near their holstered weapons. Frank slowed the truck, assessing the situation. This doesn't look good. Keep driving, Alex instructed. Slowly, let me handle this. As they approached the roadblock, one officer stepped forward, signaling them to stop. Frank complied, bringing the truck to a halt about 20 feet from the cruisers. Afternoon, officer, Alex said calmly, leaning out the window. Is there a problem? Need to see some identification. The trooper replied professionally. We've got an alert out for 5 stolen horses being transported in this area. Alex produced his driver's license, maintaining a composed demeanor. No stolen horses here, officer. These foals were rescued from abandonment. We have documentation from a veterinarian confirming their condition when found. The officer examined Alex's license, then looked past him at the foals in the truck bed. His expression revealed nothing. I'm going to need all of you to step out of the vehicle while we verify your information. It was standard procedure, but Alex sensed something off about the situation. These troopers had been positioned too precisely, as if they knew exactly where to intercept them. As they reluctantly exited the truck, the officer spoke quietly into his radio. Within minutes, the distinctive sound of an approaching helicopter reached their ears. That's not state police, Frank muttered, his experienced eyes tracking the aircraft as it appeared over a nearby ridge. Wrong markings. The helicopter, unmarked except for a serial number, circled once before beginning to descend in a clearing beside the road. As it touched down, the side door slid open, revealing a familiar figure, Edward Westridge, accompanied by 2 men in tactical gear. Impressive persistence, Mr. Winters, Westridge called over the diminishing rotor noise as he approached. But this ends now. Alex stepped forward, positioning himself between Westridge and the truck containing the foals. The story's already public, Westridge. Project Compliance has been exposed. It's over. Hardly, Westridge replied coldly. The public relations aspect is unfortunate but manageable. Corporations weather scandals every day. What cannot be lost is the genetic material those foals represent, particularly the silver gray. They're living creatures, not research specimens. Claire interjected, anger evident in her voice. Westridge barely spared her a glance. They're valuable genetic assets, critical to national security interests. Their disposition is no longer subject to civilian oversight. He gestured to the state troopers. Officers, please secure the animals for transport. As the troopers moved toward the truck, a sharp whinny cut through the air. Bird had risen to his full height in the truck bed, his posture unmistakably defensive. The other foals gathered behind him, presenting a united front. I wouldn't get too close, Frank warned the approaching officers. That silver one's smarter than most people I know. One trooper ignored the warning, reaching for Spirit's halter. The colt reacted with startling speed, rearing up and striking out with his front hooves. The officer stumbled backward, narrowly avoiding injury. "Sedate them if necessary," Westridge ordered impatiently. "We're wasting time." "On what authority?" a new voice called from down the road. All heads turned to see a ranger service truck approaching Sheriff Anderson at the wheel. Behind him sat a uniformed Forest Service officer wearing the insignia of a station chief. "This is a state police matter," one trooper began, but Anderson cut him off. "This is federal land, son. State jurisdiction is by courtesy only." He stepped out of the vehicle, followed by the ranger. "And my friend, Ranger Davis here, has some questions about an unauthorized helicopter landing in a protected wilderness area." Westridge's composed facade cracked slightly. "This is absurd. We're acting under Homeland Security protocols." "Then where are your Homeland Security credentials?" Anderson interrupted. "All I see is a civilian and some hired muscle using state resources for private interests." The ranger, a tall, stern-faced man in his 50s, approached the state troopers. "Officers, I'm going to need to see your authorization for establishing a roadblock in a federal forest. And the pilot of that helicopter is in violation of at least 7 FAA regulations by landing here." The troopers exchanged uncertain glances. Whatever instructions they had received clearly hadn't prepared them for this complication. Taking advantage of the confusion, Anderson moved closer to Alex. "Davis is my friend I mentioned. He's been briefed on the situation. There's a fire service road half a mile back that leads directly to his station. Get the foals there while we handle this." Alex nodded gratefully. "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you once we sort this out." Anderson's voice dropped further. "The governor's office just issued a statement distancing themselves from Westridge. The political winds are shifting fast." While the authorities continued their jurisdictional dispute, Alex, Claire, and Frank quietly returned to their truck. With deliberate calm, they turned around and headed back the way they had come, looking for the fire road Anderson had mentioned. Westridge noticed their departure too late. "Stop them!" he shouted, but the rangers and sheriff had effectively boxed in the state troopers, preventing immediate pursuit. The fire road was little more than a dirt track cutting through dense pine forest, barely wide enough for the truck. Frank navigated it skillfully, pushing the old vehicle as fast as he dared on the rough terrain. "How much farther to the ranger station?" Claire asked, bracing herself against the dashboard as they bounced over rocks and ruts. "Should be about 3 miles by this route," Frank replied, concentration evident in his weathered features, assuming Anderson's directions were good. In the truck bed, the foals had adjusted to the rougher ride, huddling closer together with Spirit still positioned protectively at the center. The silver-gray colt's eyes remained alert, scanning their surroundings with that uncanny awareness. The trees eventually thinned, revealing a small clearing where a modest ranger station stood, a sturdy log building with a metal roof, solar panels, and a large corral behind it. A Forest Service flag fluttered from a pole near the entrance. As they pulled up to the building, a woman in a ranger uniform emerged, clearly expecting them. "You must be Anderson's friends," she said as they exited the vehicle. "I'm Deputy Ranger Martinez. Chief Davis radioed ahead. Let's get those foals settled before company arrives." With practiced efficiency, they transferred the foals to the corral, which had already been prepared with fresh water and hay. Spirit hesitated at the corral entrance, looking back at Alex with those intelligent eyes. "It's okay," Alex assured him, stroking the silver-gray neck. "You're safe here." Something in his voice must have conveyed confidence, because Spirit finally entered the corral, the others following his lead. Once inside, the young Mustangs immediately began exploring their new surroundings, showing remarkable resilience despite the day's stresses. "They're incredible," Ranger Martinez observed, watching the foals with evident admiration. "Chief Davis mentioned they're special, but I didn't expect—" She gestured toward Spirit, who had positioned himself on a slight rise in the corral, surveying the area like a sentinel. "That one acts like he's 50 years old, not 5 weeks." "You don't know the half of it," Frank replied with a wry smile. Inside the ranger station, they found a simple but comfortable space, a main room with a radio console, maps covering the walls, and basic living quarters in the back. Martinez offered coffee, which they gratefully accepted, the adrenaline of the day's events beginning to fade into exhaustion. "Chief Davis and Sheriff Anderson should be here soon," she informed them, checking her radio. "The helicopter left about 10 minutes ago. Apparently someone from the governor's office called off the state troopers." The news coverage is working in our favor, Claire observed, pulling out her phone to check for update. Westridge is toxic now. No one wants to be associated with illegal drug trials on veterans. What happens next? Frank asked the question they all were considering. Alex gazed out the window at the corral where the 5 young Mustangs grazed peacefully, the setting sun casting long shadows across the clearing. We complete the mission, he said quietly. Make sure these foals are permanently protected and ensure Westridge and Project Compliance are shut down for good. Night had fallen by the time Sheriff Anderson and Chief Davis arrived, bringing news that shifted the landscape once again. Edward Westridge has been arrested, Anderson announced as they gathered around the ranger station's small table. Federal charges of fraud, conspiracy, illegal human experimentation, and falsification of research data. His assets have been frozen pending investigation. The dominoes are falling fast, Davis added. 3 Defense Department officials have resigned, a congressional oversight committee is being formed, and the FBI has seized all Westridge biotech facilities nationwide. The news should have felt like victory, but Alex remained cautious. What about the foals Westridge kept insisting they were critical genetic assets under national security protocols? Anderson and Davis exchanged glances. That's complicated, the sheriff admitted. The legal status of research animals is murky territory. There's still a faction within the military research community that considers Spirit in particular too valuable to simply release. Valuable how? Claire pressed. They keep fixating on him specifically. Davis pulled out a folder and spread several documents across the table. These came from Dr. Patel through Sarah Miller. According to Westridge's own research, Spirit's genetic profile is unique. Most resistant subjects, both equine and human, show partial resistance to the behavioral modification compounds. But Spirit's resistance is total 100% immunity, something they hadn't encountered before. A perfect genetic shield against mind control, Frank translated. Essentially, yes, which makes him both invaluable for further research and potentially threatening to those who want to deploy these compounds. Davis tapped another document. There's already talk in certain circles about using his genetic material to develop countermeasures drugs that could overcome even the strongest natural resistance. The implications hung heavy in the air. Even with Westridge himself neutralized, the research he'd pioneered and the threat it posed to fundamental concepts of free will remained. So what's our next move? Alex asked finally. Chief Davis leaned forward, his expression serious. I've been authorized to offer you a choice. The Bureau of Land Management has a protected Mustang sanctuary in northern Nevada, completely isolated and under federal protection. The foals could be transported there tomorrow, raised in a natural environment with other rescued Mustangs and permanently protected from further research. All of them, Claire questioned. Even Spirit. All of them, Davis confirmed. With one condition: regular veterinary monitoring to document their development, particularly their behavioral patterns. Purely observational, no testing or experimentation. Alex considered the offer carefully. Who would conduct this monitoring? That's where the second part of the offer comes in, Anderson interjected. The BLM is establishing a new research center at the sanctuary focused on ethical studies of Mustang behavior and genetics. They need a head veterinarian with experience in both clinical care and research methodology. All eyes turned to Claire, who looked momentarily stunned. Me, but my license has been fully reinstated, Davis assured her. The veterinary board reviewed your case in light of recent revelations about Westridge. Your ethical stance has been vindicated. And there's more, Anderson continued. The sanctuary requires an on-site manager, someone with military discipline, practical ranch experience, and a proven commitment to the welfare of these animals. Now it was Alex's turn to look surprised. I'm not qualified. You're exactly qualified, Frank interrupted. You've kept these foals alive against impossible odds. You've faced down corporate thugs and government agents to protect them. Who better? The offer was unexpected, but not unwelcome. In the weeks since finding the abandoned foals, Alex had found purpose again, a reason to get up each morning to push through the lingering trauma of war. The thought of continuing that journey of helping not just these 5, but others like them, while working alongside Claire. He met her eyes across the table, seeing the same cautious hope reflected there. "It's your decision," she said softly. "Both of us. No pressure either way." Alex turned to the window, looking out at the corral where the five foals rested under the starlit sky. Spirit stood apart from the others, his silver coat gleaming in the moonlight, those intelligent eyes seemingly fixed on the ranger station as if aware of the conversation inside. In that moment, Alex felt again the inexplicable connection that had formed between them, not just human and animal, but something deeper. A recognition of kindred spirits, both wounded by circumstances beyond their control, both fighting to preserve something essential within themselves. "I'll do it," he decided, the words feeling right as he spoke them. "If Claire agrees." She reached across the table, taking his hand in hers. "Partners." "Partners," he confirmed, squeezing her hand gently. The arrangements were made quickly. By morning, transportation had been secured for the foals, a specialized trailer designed for long-distance transport of wild horses, with compartments to keep them safe and comfortable. A BLM convoy would escort them to the sanctuary, ensuring no further interference from remaining Westridge loyalists or military interests. As dawn broke over Broken Ridge, Alex stood beside the corral, watching the young Mustangs greet the new day. In just weeks, they had transformed from dying foals to vibrant young horses, each with distinct personalities emerging. Ember with her fiery spirit, Goldie with her gentle demeanor, and Shadow gradually overcoming his wariness, Survivor living up to his name with remarkable resilience, and Spirit, the silver-gray colt with the white star marking, whose mysterious connection to Alex had guided them both through darkness toward healing. "Ready to say goodbye to this place?" Claire asked, joining him at the fence. "Not goodbye," Alex corrected. "Just the next chapter." Frank approached, carrying his battered hat. "Trucks loaded, BLM convoys ready when you are." Alex nodded, turning to the old rancher, who had become a trusted friend through their ordeal. "What about you, coming with us?" Frank shook his head, a hint of sadness in his weathered features. "My place is here. Raymond needs help with the legal aftermath, and someone's got to keep an eye on the water rights situation now that Westridge is gone." He placed a hand on Alex's shoulder. "But I'll visit. Those foals and I have unfinished business." The loading went smoothly, the young Mustangs now accustomed to human handling and the trailer environment. Spirit has always led the way, the others following his confident example. As Alex secured the trailer door, the silver-gray colt met his gaze one final time, and an understanding passing between them that transcended words. The journey to Nevada would take most of the day, crossing state lines and changing landscapes. Alex drove the lead vehicle with Claire beside him and the precious cargo behind. The BLM convoy, 3 vehicles carrying rangers and equipment for the sanctuary, followed at a respectful distance. As they left Broken Ridge behind, following the highway west toward their new beginning, Alex felt a weight lifting from his shoulders. The nightmares of Afghanistan had not disappeared entirely. Such wounds never fully heal, but they had receded, replaced by a sense of purpose that grew stronger with each passing day. "Penny for your thoughts," Claire said, breaking the comfortable silence between them. Alex smiled, eyes on the road ahead. "Just thinking about how life takes unexpected turns. 3 months ago, I was a broken man with no direction. Now you're still healing," she finished for him, "but not alone." The desert landscape stretched before them, vast and seemingly limitless. Somewhere ahead lay the sanctuary where 5 special Mustangs would grow up, protected, their unique genetic heritage preserved not as research specimens, but as living symbols of resistance and resilience. In the trailer behind them, Spirit stood watchfully, his presence a constant reminder that some bonds transcend ordinary understanding. Whether the white star on his forehead truly marked him as a messenger between worlds, as Frank believed, or simply as a genetic anomaly that defied Westridge's attempts at control, didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the journey they had begun together, a journey of healing, of purpose, rediscovered of wild spirits, finding their rightful place in a world that too often sought to tame what should remain free. The road unfolded before them, leading west toward new horizons and the promise of tomorrows yet to be written. As the desert highway stretches toward the horizon, Alex watches the trailer in his rear-view mirror, carrying 5 lives that changed everything. 3 months ago, he was a broken soldier, returning to a place that held no joy, seeking not to live, but merely not to die elsewhere. Now, the nightmares haven't disappeared, but they've retreated before a stronger purpose. Sometimes our deepest healing comes from the most unexpected sources. 5 abandoned foals deemed worthless by those who created them became the very bridge that carried a wounded warrior back to himself. In spirit, with his mysterious white star and eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom, perhaps he was equally what Frank had called him, a messenger between worlds, a guide for lost souls. We all carry marks within us, some visible, some hidden deep. But what others might label as flaws may be our greatest strength. The capacity to resist, to maintain our essential nature against forces that would remake us into something more compliant, more useful, less free. As the sanctuary appears in the distance, Alex feels not an ending, but a beginning. Some spirits are born to run wild. Some hearts are meant to protect what cannot protect itself. And in that sacred space between broken and healing, we find our truest purpose. What marks do you carry, and what might they be trying to tell you about who you truly are?